allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join the meeting.
Okay, we have Mr. Belden that just signed in. Okay. All right, so if we're ready, just a few quick words. All right, so I want to just acknowledge that I had received some communication from Ms. Lalvin. Correct me, please, if I said your name incorrectly. All right, so as it pertains to the city budget, it's quite lengthy. And there's some stuff that, to me almost seemed a little repetitious, but that's okay. I appreciate your hard work on it. All right. But, my approach for the meeting tonight, okay, and pretty much all of it, will be at this point to review some of the larger city departments, and then, I've asked for responders from the department heads in some cases that they will be here or in person or otherwise. All right. Mr. Hiller will also be, present to clear up any questions or anything that seems ambiguous to you, for your questions. Okay. For in the general area of the budget. All right. Keep in mind that the overall budget spending is minimal and reflects the tax reduction. All right, for all taxpayers and residents and businesses alike. All right, as the mayor mentioned, in his presentation, that the Board of Ed, all right, more than likely will get an addition to their increase. All right, and this is certainly reflecting upon what due to COVID that they would end up getting, from the state. Okay. With the federal oversight, Board of Education. All right, we certainly reviewed what was going on with them. All right, and clarification, we'll leave it to the Board of Aldermen to finalize. All right, it should be noted that last week at our last meeting, we certainly had the hearing with the Board of Aldermen, all right, and it lasted only about an hour and 10 minutes, all right, with very few, pertinent questions. Probably most important of all is the fact that they have, certainly over in the past, student enrollment has dropped pretty significantly to about 1,300 students since 2009. And staffing level, not correspondent with, that. And yet the BOE still needs millions more every year. All right, so let's kind of keep that in mind. And again, like I said, there's monies that are going to be coming in. I'm very happy to hear that both the Board of Education and the Board of Aldermen and the mayor have a good working relationship at this point, which has never really been in the past. So I'm confident that any questions they have additionally, as far as any more monies is concerned, I certainly have confidence that between them and Mr. Hiller and the others, the meeting of the minds will certainly, get it all taken care of. All right. It should also be noted that the Board of Education represents about 65% of all city spending and does not include capital, which is separate and additional. All right. I will reserve the right to conduct additional hearings if I deem necessary. Okay. With that, we've already done roll call and the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's start with the first, which will be.
Mr. Chairman, can I just interject for a second?
Absolutely, please.
I have a request. Mr. Herrick, head of Parks and Recreation, is here and has a previous personal commitment. And if we could hear from Mr. Herrick first, would be in his best interest.
Okay, absolutely. Sure, noted. Go ahead, Mr. Herrick. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. The budget that Parks and Recreation presented, I put it together in December. Our commission meets, looks it over, approves it in January, and obviously goes to the mayor. And what we got back, we can live with. We'll make it do. We have to get the things done that we need to do.
Excuse me, can you please list your city number, the code, so we could reference where you are?
001-1000.
Thank you.
622.
Go ahead. Got it.
You all set? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And, obviously the biggest thing is COVID had a huge, we've had a huge issue with that, so numbers are skewed, income, payroll, due to that. And putting this together in December, it's also very difficult to know where this was going for next year. So I don't know if you have anything for me at this time?
Could I just
I'm sorry, say that again?
This comment will relate to every operating department within the city that has payroll accounts. You were handed last Thursday night accounting sheets dated April 22nd, which gives the payroll figures and other expenses within every department for the city. But pertaining purely to payrolls, the numbers that are posted are through the end of March. The payrolls paid on April 2nd and April 16th have not been posted, and clearly the payroll for this coming Friday, April 30th, will not be posted. So really what you're looking at with the payroll is approximately just under 73% of the budget would be expended. So there's a variance there. You're missing what had been spent and what intended to be spent, but we're almost 3/4 of the way there. So in every department with payroll costs, that's going to be attributable, including Parks and Recreation, obviously.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to that, Mr. Hiller? When I did my estimations for the purposes of the questions that I had drafted and given in advance, which was at your request, I was estimating that there was about 40 weeks expended, and there were about 12 weeks remaining in the
I think we're off
year.
by a week or so.
Okay, I can live with that as long as I'm in the ballpark.
You're quite close, but I just wanted to make that clear as to what these numbers reflect.
Okay.
Because in some cases, well, with Parks and Recreation, there's also is some seasonality to the numbers.
Sure.
There's also, throughout this year, there's been a buildup, which basically began at the beginning of the year, because we had so many people, particularly part-time employees, laid off or out, and that has been building continually over the last 10 months and continues to build.
So, Mr.
And
Hurst,
Paul, one question. Oops, sorry.
go ahead.
All right, and who's speaking?
Michelle Loudon.
No, there was somebody else that jumped in. And if you can please introduce yourself when you do, that would be greatly appreciated. And also, I'd like to limit, the questions in each department to the question and answer to 5 minutes. Okay, so who was that just spoke up other than Michelle?
It's John Belden.
All right, John, go ahead.
Hey, Paul. And the numbers, too, because of COVID and stuff being closed, they're going to be a little out of whack compared to other years, correct?
A lot of what you see is reflective of what's happened in COVID in many of the operating departments. In some of the operating departments, particularly public safety, that is not the case. Police department, animal control, areas like that, the fire department, obviously, they continued at full force, and in some cases had at additional responsibilities as a result of COVID.
Okay, and it's certainly, again, because of that, there's no telling what additional monies will come in to help offset a lot of those costs. Would that be correct? And this is Jay?
We have received some monies. We received, I call it our Christmas present because it was credited on December 25th. We received just over $350,000 from the state of Connecticut for COVID-related expenses. We have not obviously spent all of that as of yet. Much of it has been spent on cleaning supplies, masks, buying plastic, et cetera, et cetera. Additionally, more recently, we are upgrading several of the technology areas that are COVID-related. The city attorney has spoken with the OPM in Hartford, and we have to spend that money by December 31st of this year. If there is anything left as of December 31st, it can be transferred or, frankly, a journal entry with the police department because of additional costs that the police department had as far as their payroll is concerned. If we haven't spent it on other items such as cleaning supplies, plexiglass, et cetera, or technology matters. As an example, we have just purchased for the senior center 2 tents so that they can convene outside. These are, in a sense, portable tents. That can be used for other, once the senior center gets back to some normalcy, can be used at other functions throughout the city. And those were expensed against the COVID revenue.
I think Mr. Herrick had a time limit, and I just want to be respectful of his time. Did you receive the questions that I forwarded to Mr. Hiller?
Briefly, I did. One thing I'll say, which kind of goes along with Mr. Hiller, just in our department, we did have 2 were laid off for quite a while, and in the past year, I've had 2 retirements, 1 transfer, and 1 termination. So that reflects the numbers also. Those are full-time. I will also say that, very hopeful, park maintainer positions are posted. We're accepting applications. We'll get 2, 3, let's see what happens. But that's been posted, and we anticipate the park will not process.
Yes, Joan Apic. There's a disparity between the department request and what the mayor recommended in 3 categories of $91,316. What impact is this going to have on your department?
Well, I believe you're talking the full-time payroll. I think it was $10,500. We'll be able to make do with that because oftentimes, Mr. Basher can answer this. I believe I put them in at the mid-level. They can sometimes start at 16% below, which is possibly happening. So I think that won't be a problem. The $52,000 in part-time. If full-time positions are filled, that will take away from the part-time. I need people to do the work. I think you understand that we talk about this. So whether it's part-time or full-time. So if we get some full-time people, part-time would go down. So those are balanced. 10,000 was in outside services. That's an unknown. A lot of that's tree work, irrigation work, any other type of outside people have to come in and do work that's not in our budget. We got clobbered with tree work last year. Hopefully that won't be the case. I've had to transfer in the past. We'll see if I have to next year.
Well, if it's unlikely that you don't need that really, you can get along without the $91,316. Why would you request it in your budget request?
The full-time are all union positions. My commission puts them in. They were all filled by people at one point. So we put those in each year. Hopefully we'll fill them all this year. We just move forward with the testing and the applications that are being accepted now.
So this is a question of filling positions that has situations lasted for a time?
Over the last year, some of them are very recent. Some of them are secretary retired as of She's retiring May 1st. She hasn't been in because she was laid off. She officially retired. Some go back 9 or 10 months.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
And Mr. Herrick, you indicated that you have a union in your, department. Is that contract settled at this point?
We have 2 unions. One is settled, one is not.
How
One
long?
just settled a month or 2 ago, and the other one is going to be approaching 3 years, I believe.
Is it in arbitration, or what's the
I
status?
believe it's in negotiations, yes. That's our Parks Department.
What's the reason that the contract isn't settled?
I don't know, I really have no, it's not under my purview. I'm not involved with the union. I'm not in the union. You've got to check with the union president and or their, Teamsters who represents them.
You're not involved in the negotiation.
I am not, no.
Are you anticipating that that's gonna be settled this year?
I can't answer that.
I did have a question about the revenue projections. You were projecting revenues in your department of $323,000, which I assume is based on the previous year's receipts of $390,000. In 2021, you estimated revenue at $109,000, but the actual amount received was $390,000.
No, there's some confusion there. Right now, 2021,
Yeah.
okay, I had anticipated when I did this in December, and I don't know what figures you got, but this is my copy, I anticipated income of $109,000. Okay, right now, today, we have taken an income of $79,000.
Oh.
I believe you show 70, but I'm up to date because I did some deposits just in the last week. Next year, I had to get a question
Not
about
in there at all.
this budget we're talking about now, $323,000. Again, that's an unknown, so it's a little bit less than our last full year of the $390,000, but we don't know where we're going to be. So I don't want to give you a number of $500,000 and we're not going to hit it. There's no way to tell. We're running right now at about 35% capacity. It's starting to come back with our programs and classes. I don't think we're going to be at full bore, maybe late fall, maybe, so we're going to miss a few months of that, so that's where that 323 came from. It's obviously an estimate, but we've been doing it for 20-some-odd years. We usually have a decent idea.
Okay. I know that classes are difficult to schedule right now, so that's
We've got some that are doing okay, but others, people just, they don't want to come out yet.
okay. And did you want to make any comments about the capital budget? Is anything going to be?
No, I mean,
Did this year?
the commission puts that together, kind of like a wish list. Some of the items at the community center, they might fall under building maintenance, but as far as we know, we're not sure if he puts a capital budget together, so we did include that, like the carpeting and windows. It needs to be done, and I think you need to know that, so that's why I put it in. If building maintenance did do it, it's redundant, I apologize, but I'm not sure that he did. I don't see their budget, so, and our offices are in the community center, we see it every day.
As far as you know, there's nothing specific that's in your budget that pertains to capital expenditures?
Minor playground, if there's something like swings or whatnot, we could do that, but as far as, playscapes or pieces are expensive, I don't really have that in my budget.
Okay, got it.
One thing I think you might.
Okay. All right, so in the interest of time again, as noted, we are a bit past 5 minutes. I certainly appreciate, your answers there, Mr. Herrick. Do you have anything further at this point?
I just wanted to mention that we are in the midst of upgrades with our department, online registration, a new website should be up by the end of May. Purchase orders were already cut in the process. We're waiting for Dan Bednarski, IT, to get us some equipment, so hopefully that will make things much easier, and it's been a long time coming.
Cutting off discussions, this is supposed to be a hearing, after 5 minutes is arbitrary, and I would object to that, 5 minutes.
Okay, well, due noted, but I would like to, keep it going so that, everybody has an opportunity here, okay? For the people that came. So we're going to stick with 5 minutes.
In the past for, presentations and hearings to recur, not have everything be congealed into one session where discussion is limited to 5 minutes, that's, not in the best interest of the city of Shelton.
Well, I also mentioned, per individual, 5 minutes. And I think that can be plenty enough time. And if there's any more that needs to be done, then we will certainly discuss that. Thank you.
Sorry, is it 5 minutes per question?
Are you done, Mr. Herrick?
Per department. I'm confused.
All right. Per department, 5 minutes, okay, but the question and answers will be 5 minutes. Okay, so
We
the
were not
department head has
notified of
5
any
minutes in
minimum
which
time
to,
limit.
the department head has 5 minutes, okay, to do their presentation. All right. The question and answer per individual will also be 5 minutes.
Well, as far as I know, I'm the only person who submitted questions in advance, and I did a lot of work to do that, and I'd like to get answers to those questions.
Well, then if we need a couple of more minutes on the back end of that, then we'll certainly afford that. So if Mr. Herrick is done, are you done, sir?
Yes, I'm done.
I have one more
Okay.
question, Steve Grella. With everything that went on with COVID, how's the ventilation system in the community center?
I believe it's adequate, but you really need to verify that with building maintenance. They take care of all that. We program the building, staff it, but we're not involved in the maintenance of it.
Because with the state sending down 11 to 12 million, that would be a good earmark for the community center.
Truthfully, that would be building maintenance.
Right, okay,
So-
thank you.
Okay. I think I got the points that you had submitted.
You did.
so,
Thank you
yeah.
so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Herrick.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you, Ron.
You as
Thank
well.
you, Ron.
All right. Who do we have next?
You want to take the people?
I'd like to take, because it's just one department, I'd like to take Mr. Gaffney, who is the assessor for the city of Shelton, and he is here to answer questions. There are some significant increases in his budget. It is
Can you just tell us what number that is?
towards the end,
300.
budget 5,300.
Okay, I'm there. Did you want to start with explanation of the increases, or where did you want to begin?
I think you had Mrs. Laubin, you had 3 specific items,
Correct.
3 specific questions. One being regular payroll, which I think Mr. Gaffney is prepared to offer explanations on all 3 of your questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have my questions?
I do.
I don't think that the public will have read the questions, so if you could just summarize in your answer, that would be great.
Okay. As Paul spoke about earlier, you spoke about the salaries, and in my, on my, budget, you had $375,000. And, again, that was to the end of March. I've had one layoff this past year for $45,000 salary. So at the end of June, my salary budget will be $414,000. But you had, in your notes, you had written $375,852, and I believe that was not to the end of the year.
Okay,
All right?
fair enough.
So does that answer that?
Yeah, I mean, the question was really, was there a COVID impact or a layoff or something that was
Layoff.
impacting that? It sounds like there was a layoff, so that's impacting what's coming in at this point. And on budget form 2, you indicated that all budgeted positions were currently filled, and it sounds like that might be a little bit out of date just because of the layoff. Is that?
It may not be filled.
Okay.
That position may not be filled. I'm all right with what I have. And, I I don't believe that needs to be filled at this time.
And what was that position again?
It was a clerk B,
Okay. So it's assessment clerk or something like
yes.
that? Okay.
Okay. And then question number 2 was about professional services. This is line item 412.3001, and the item is budgeted.
Karen Kemesey joined the meeting.
The item is budgeted at $15,000, and you requested $404,000?
Yeah.
What
What
is that?
happened was, we have a revaluation this year, and I didn't really have a line item to put the cost of that into the budget, so I put in professional services. Then I had a meeting with the mayor, and he, rightly so, developed another line item for revaluation, so that way, that money was sitting right where it was gonna be spent. Because revaluations in Connecticut are every 5 years, so it's not a continuous line item. So, we had made a line item of revaluation, and in that line item, that $400,000 has been removed and put in a revaluation budget line item.
Okay. So, Paul, do we have a new, line item for that?
There was a new, the mayor created a new line item within the budget. Let me get to the right page here.
412.30.
If you look on the,
Oh, I see it. Okay.
what he did basically, or the mayor's recommendation,
Got it.
is to create a line specific to the revaluation expenses.
Yep.
You'll see there's a line for revaluation services. Obviously, you have no expenditures or no budget for the current year, and we've budgeted that at $385,000 for the outside firm that is doing the revaluation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That answers that question.
I'm sorry?
That's on 48. Yeah.
The line item is in budget 5300, 5300, about 3/4 of the way down. Line item 30-08, revaluation services, on page 48 of the budget.
What I'm asking is, where is that new line item that was established? Where is that in the budget?
Established within the assessor's department budget. If you look on the sheets which have the mayor's recommendation,
Page 48. Yeah, I see it at the department request, $404,000. You said there's a new line item established. Where is that new thing?
it is right below, 2 lines below Mr. Gaffney's request, which was $404,000 for professional services. 2 lines down, the mayor created a line for revaluation services of $385,000.
Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
That's okay. I'm glad we got that straightened out. Why is that so expensive? Who does that, and why is it?
Cheap
That's
compared to
cheap?
other towns. Bridgeport just paid $1.2 million.
Okay,
Large
so I guess we
city.
should be grateful it's only $385,000. So who does that service?
We bid it out,
You bid it out, okay.
the company out of Berkeley.
Okay, so there's gonna be a competitive bidding process for
It
this?
was, it's over. We've started the reval right now.
Okay.
You're gonna receive a notice in the mail.
Some people should have
Probably
received the
sitting
notice
in my mail bin right now.
A lot of people are asking why we're sending it to Fairfield, and that was the explanation.
That's where the company's located,
Okay,
and as a
great.
matter of fact, this was my fault. I should have announced it earlier than that. The timing was off between the revaluation company and myself as far as when they were going out. So I believe tomorrow it will be on Facebook, it'll be on the website, in both the homepage and my page, and it's also going to the Charlotte Herald just to get that information out. I do apologize for that, it was an oversight on my part. Believe me, I've been getting a lot of calls.
Well, thank you for that clarification, because it certainly saved me a little bit of time, because my wife had the same question.
Good.
We got ours in the mail today, or yesterday.
Relatives, whatever you have. Then the third one was the
The personal property audit, and it's going from $12,500 to $50,000. And we haven't spent anything in that line item this year?
This year, the mayor, Paul, myself, decided to do a personal property audit, which we did, I think, 2 years ago. And it basically, recouped the money spent plus another, $60,000, Paul, or $107,000 in taxes, in tax dollars coming back because of the audit.
Okay.
We feel that that'll probably be the same, if not greater. And what that is an inventory of all the businesses in town. Not all of them, it's kind of handpicked who was already done. Obviously, we're not going to do again, but those that weren't, we go in and see what their furniture, fixture, equipment, et cetera is, and make sure that they're reporting correctly.
Okay. I guess I'm just a little confused about what the spending, because you have 20,000, in 2020, the cost was $1,796. So if we're doing it again in this fiscal year 2022, why would we need $50,000 in that line item?
$50,000 is for, we hire an auditor. That's for an auditor to come in and do the audit for us. That's his fee.
Okay.
And prior to that, we use him sporadically for companies. I am not proficient at looking at people's income tax records or their asset lists or anything like that. I have no idea. I'm not an accountant, and that's what he does. So if there's an issue that I see coming along the road, I'm able to call him. He would come in and, review it and then contact them if there was any further information he needed. So that's what that cost was for, just kind of sitting there in case down the road we needed him to come in. I didn't have to go and transfer money or anything like that.
Okay, but you're saying that this was done 2 years ago, and the cost was $1,700. So why would the cost be $50,000?
Cost previously was $40,000.
$40,000.
Okay, so that wasn't fiscal year 2020 then?
Recollection, and that's revenue. There's sometimes a lag on it. The revenue came in this year. Look at this year's revenue line. There is revenue of $107,000, which came in. That does not include interest and penalties. The interest and penalties are included in it. So it's frankly a very good return on investment. If we spend $40,000 or $50,000 and get back $107,000 plus interest penalties, it works out. And plus the fact, most of those taxpayers realize that we know it and it moves forward. We have the ability under state statute to go back 3 years. And they do it. So they'll not only be looking at the grand list this year of 20, but also of 19 and 18. So it's a 3-year look back.
Okay, yeah,
And we won't go to the same companies.
It must have been fiscal year 2019 then.
The professional who does this is probably the best in the state. He thought of Madison.
Yeah,
Madison.
Great.
And it's had very good success here. I had him in my previous community. Very good success there.
Connected to Lawrence Hall.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is that my phone?
All right, you've convinced me. Thank you so much. I don't have anything else. I don't know if anybody else does.
Good.
Thank you.
Here you go. Wow.
Thanks.
Well, wonderful people.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to start at the top of the question on administrative office?
Hello. Hi, Paul. There was some noise in the background there. Are you able to hear me?
Do now, yes.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to call the people that are in the room, or do you want to start at the top and go through in order?
Let's just go with the people that are in the room at the moment. I think that might help us move things right along. All right, so Mr. Hiller, certainly you can see who's in there.
All right, that would, we have representatives from the police department, Mr. Basher's here, representing administrative office, employee benefits, employee resources, for
All right.
And he's here prepared to answer questions relating to those which are pages 1 and 2.
Should we start there? Administrative office? Is that you, Mr. Basher?
Yep.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Basser.
Mr. Basher, you have my question?
I have your questions.
Okay, perfect.
Essentially, this budget is a flatline budget, similar to all the budgets that we've passed over the past 5 years. Not much change to it. I think that the question relative to the full-time payroll under administrative on the line 411.10-01 is got some erroneous assumptions.
Okay.
There's no way that anybody's going to get a 6.6% increase in the administration. I can tell you that for sure. As a matter of fact, in 2020, July 2020, the mayor's increase was 1.3%. The administrative assistant was 2%. Executive secretary was 2.25%. Constituent caseworker was 2%, and economic development clerk was 2%. As you can see, if I have the actual salaries for that year, it totaled 444, 641, and I believe that that's what the mayor has recommended. So I'm fine with that.
So how are we getting to a 6.6 increase in that line item if the individual?
That's your math, not mine.
No, actually, it's taken from the
The
budget
worksheet.
form,
Yeah,
the
I think the
worksheet.
worksheet is erroneous.
Okay,
Because I don't believe that that's, I watch every year what the increases are. Increases are at the most 2.5%. There's very few people that get much, because you're talking about mayor assistant employees here. The most that, the mayor gives out is about 2.5%, which is consistent with all of our union contracts, clearly way less than what the Board of Ed's increases are.
okay. Thank you. Professional services? Last year we had $25,000 and the year-to-date expenditure is currently at about $1,500, so why do we think we need $25,000 in that line item?
Which one are you talking about again?
30-01, I think is what I have written down, professional
Yeah.
services,
Okay, so the mayor has reduced my request to $25,000.
right?
And that's what it was in the 2021 budget. So that's a flat line, there's no increase there, same as it was last year.
Yeah, I'm not questioning an increase, I'm questioning why $25,000 is needed in that line item when the spending year-to-date is approximately $1,500. Why are you estimating that you're gonna need $25,000?
$16,500.
Okay, I did not have that. Which sheet are you looking at?
The sheet for budget form 4, it says professional services, line item 30.01.
Okay.
And that includes appraisers, attorney's fees, and consulting fees.
I'm looking at proposed budget, page 1. Under year-to-date expenditures, it says $1,597. Mr. Hiller, can you clarify what the discrepancy might be there?
Which line was that again, Sloan?
30-01.
30-01, professional services.
I show, as you indicate, 1597 year to date.
But the actual expenditures for fiscal year 2020 was 16,500.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're in the same ballpark.
That's right.
We don't know when we have to do appraisals. There's been a bunch of foreclosures that require appraisals all the time. There's been some takings that we are anticipating. So the number of 25,000 is very realistic.
Okay. So that, in your case, professional services is used for appraisals on foreclosures?
It's attorney's fees, appraisers' fees, and consulting fees. Yes.
And then I had a question about the lease rental payments.
Yeah, I'm not sure why there's any question. Again, I think the percentage change is probably erroneous. I'm not quite sure how it gets to that number. I don't plug that in. That's automatic, but you can see that the actual lease payments that we're making are $24,000. So that's what was requested in the budget. Fiscal year 2020, the actual lease payments was $23,100. So small increases, probably cost of living increases in the leases.
Okay. I'm not sure why would there be errors on the budgeting forms? Isn't this something that your office is preparing?
No, I don't deal with the percentage increase that's plugged in apparently automatically. I just put in the actual, I have certain areas in the budget worksheet that require me to give you information. I plug that in, and this is what comes out.
Okay.
Clearly,
Thank you.
you can see from what I've put in, the $24,000 is the lease payments that are due. And that's actual. And, again, 23-1 was what we actually paid the year before.
Thank you. That's all I had for that one. I don't know if there's other questions.
I'm showing 23-1 spent last fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to go on to employee resources?
Sure. Employee resources, again, if you look at the salary of the personnel director, the benefits administrator's fees, and again, their increases were not 8.56. I can tell you that they received the following. July 1 of 2020, Human Resource Director was increased by 2%, and the Benefits Administrator was increased by 2.5%. That's their salary increases. And again, well below what the Board of Education receives, and well below below some of the unions, and consistent with other merit system employees.
Okay, is it correct that there are 2 unfilled positions in human resources?
No.
Okay.
There is an assistant who is a part-time employee who works in the human resources department.
So that's, again, I guess an error on the budget backup material. According to the position census that we received, there were 2 unfilled positions, so. Okay. It would be great if we could figure out, this would take less time if we could figure out how to get accurate information in the budget backup material. We also have the question about the group insurance projection. Now, it was projected originally, I guess, to increase by almost 24%. From 3.4 million to 4.2 million.
Right.
And then I see that estimate was pulled back for some reason.
Right.
So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. The mayor reduced it from 4.2 to 3.7, which is the actual cost. nobody has a crystal ball on these things. The city is self-insured. We do have a stopgap insurance policy to cover major catastrophes. But nobody really can tell exactly how much the medical costs are going to be. We put in a bunch of programs, incentives for our employees to come in and do wellness checks and incentives like that. We put in a program relative to helping those people that have very serious illnesses. But nobody can predict what the cost is going to be. The best thing that we can do in any budget, and I think the purpose of any budget, is to basically project what your expenses are going to be based on the past history. So the mayor feels very comfortable with leaving it at the 3.7. I'm fine with that.
What was the reason for the original estimate of 4.2 million, do you know?
That was a number I picked up talking to some people about what our projections are. We do have a consultant. They always are very, very high. So I threw it in knowing that the mayor would review it and make a decision on it.
I mean, we did note when we spoke with the Board of Education that their increases are about 2.4% for the upcoming fiscal year. The increases on the city side for group insurance do seem to be a little bit higher than that, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't calculated the new percentage, but I'm just wondering whether there's any move on the part of the city to move to a system more like what the Board of Education is using, since that seems to be more cost effective.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, number one. They have a different program than we do. Right now it's working well with the city employees, and by the way, we're contractually obligated to provide this policy on this campus. The Board of Ed was able to negotiate in their union contracts a different deal. I'm not sure it's as beneficial to the employees as the one that we have.
You also have a number of contracts that are open and in negotiations, though, right?
They're not in negotiation. The highways and bridges and the water pollution control is both in arbitration. We just settled the admin clerical, we settled the supervisors union.
And I believe the police contract is also in arbitration, right?
Police contract is also in arbitration, yes.
What's the expected time frame on settlement of those, do you know?
I have no idea.
There's no timeline on the arbitration?
That's not germane to what we're doing here today.
Well, it is germane because we're trying to figure out how much money to plug in for anticipated increases, and we have to figure out what back pay would be anticipated to be once the contracts are settled, right?
There would be, yeah, but I think there's sufficient amount of money to take care of the retros.
And there's no timeline on when those will be decided, is that what
They're
you're
right
saying?
in the middle of hearings right now.
All right, I feel that's something that can certainly be, discussed a little bit more down the road, or even satisfied answers through email.
Like settle for it, so we don't want to say anything about that.
That wasn't my question. Okay, so professional services, you have a scheduled increase from $85,000 to $95,000 this year.
Correct.
I have a lot of questions about that, but what's the need for the additional legal services at this point in time?
Well, we spent $104,000 last year, so we better budget more based on that history to the $95,000. Last year was $85,000. It's increased by $10,000. I don't think that's a substantial increase, especially considering the fact that we expended $104,000 last year.
Okay. Are there any more questions at this point from Mr. Basher? And Mr. Basher, do you have anything yourself at this point?
I think I answered all of the questions that were raised by
All right.
the questions that I was presented. The other departments that I have are Ethics Committee, Employee Appeal Board. All of those are placeholders. We really don't spend that much money on those, very little.
What numbers are those, do you know? I don't think I had any questions
I do
about
have
that.
it. ethics is 400,
No, not on my list.
and employee, appeal board, I'm not sure, it's $200. It stays the same all the time.
I
We never have
didn't have any
employees-
questions about that one.
We never have any employees complaining, so.
Do you anticipate that you're gonna have the same amount of litigation this year as last year?
You're an attorney. Seriously, how do you know what kind of litigation you're gonna have,
Well, you know how many lawsuits you currently have open,
right?
and it's the same as last year, is what you're telling me.
Trying to think. I mean, yes, I haven't seen any settlements
Okay.
on any of the lawsuits that are pending.
Thank you.
We've only been, Agnes has a question.
I don't have a question, I was just going to ask you if you would, explain the limitation, that is, health insurance. I believe one of our unions is we have a clause whereby the city covers up to so much and then the city.
Right. Right now, the police department, pays, contributes towards the medical insurance coverage for the city under their contract, their existing contract. All of the other union contracts have a cap on it to protect the city, so that if any given year, the cost of medical costs exceeds more than 8.5%, the employees will be assessed, the differential. That has not happened in 30 years until about 2 years ago, when medical expenses skyrocketed. There was an assessment to all of the employees for the differential between the 8.5%. But each year, that bar continues to be raised. So, for example, if, I'm just going to pick a number, if it was $3 million last year, it has to increase more than 8.5% the following year. If it doesn't, they won't get assessed. But that $3 million, if it goes up to $3.2 million, that'll be the new bar. So the bar keeps going up as long as it doesn't exceed the 8.5%.
Okay, is there anything further?
That's it.
Okay, does anybody else have anything further? Okay, so, all right, so what does it look like we have next in the audience there? Did I hear that we had the police department?
Police department is here, Chief Square, Donna McFadden.
Okay. Well, let's say hi to Chief Square then.
$2,500.
Budget $2,500.
Good evening, Board of Aldermen and A&T Board.
Good evening.
I just want to kind of have an intro statement, just to let you know where the department is, where we're heading, different staffing levels, some challenges.
I'm sorry, Chief, excuse me. Could you speak up just a little bit? You know, I'm having a little difficulty myself and anybody else that might be, on telephone. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
No problem. How's this? A lot better?
Oh, that's much better.
All
Much better.
I just want to speak and have a little intro just to let you know where the police department is, where we currently are going to be headed, some of the challenges we faced during COVID, and just to let you know the staffing levels, and maybe it might even help out with any anticipated questions you might have and clear up. We currently have 50 officers, including 2 recruits in the Milford Police Academy. We currently have 5 lieutenants, 8 sergeants, 3 detectives, 30 patrol officers, and we are currently budgeted for 58 officers. We hired 11 officers in about a 15-month time period. We currently have an active certified list and we'll be hiring more lateral officers in the next couple months. We currently have 6 officers that are eligible to retire. We have 6 full-time dispatchers, and we're budgeted for 7. We have 5 part-time dispatchers. The full-time staff that are not sworn officers are such as the IT manager, the administrative assistant to the chief, and 3 part-time civilian staff. Due to this pandemic, outside the officers, we do not have a full staff with regards to part-time employees and 1 full-time position within the Shelton PD. The Shelton PD was shut down in certain areas, and as we continue to reopen, we'll move forward with those positions will return as needed. Certain areas of the budget, you will discover a temporary reduced cost due to COVID. However, you will note some additional costs as a result of the state-mandated accreditation, as well as the state-mandated police accountability bill. So you will see some increases in that area. Due to COVID, you will discover that certain areas were reduced and reflected, such examples of those areas are like training. Training was temporarily shut down. There was travel restrictions which halted out-of-state training. We are also pursuing a full-time training academy for recruits, which have obviously an associated cost with this operation. I'm currently in discussion with the mayor for that. You will notice that the overtime has been reduced in areas due to the cancellation of community events and activities. There is no exact average of overtime as it fluctuates during different times of the year. An example would be the months of May and June are always significantly higher. When the weather comes and it's good weather, officers, as they approach the fiscal year ending in July, they use their vacation time in this facility. We also have our events, like the parades, like different events because of the Indian Wells, Pine Rock Park, they have a cost with it for overtime. I'm pleased to announce that the police department continues to present a reasonable budget while protecting and serving the citizens' safety remains to be our utmost priority. We create a budget based on our needs and properly allocate our funds. However, as we receive the necessary requested funds, we continue to be fiscally responsible by continuously looking to cost savings. We try to cost savings in all areas of the department. If any funds remain at all, we ask that it be returned back to the general fund, as should every other department. I'm proud to announce that we maintain the state accreditation award again. The state has now mandated through the state statute, that accountability bill, that all police departments pursue Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and CALIA federal accreditation. Unfortunately, the pursuance of Tier 2 was at a little halt and slowed down due to the pandemic. But we are currently in state compliance. We recently were ranked number 5, which I'm proud to say, and recognized as the 5th safest city in the state of Connecticut. I believe all the officers deserve the credit for that. I open it up to any questions, any clarifications, anything you might need that may help assist in understanding.
Okay, does anybody?
I'll start with my questions, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I actually want to start with question number 2, which has to do with the payroll from last year. Typically, as long as I've been on A&T, and I think going back many, many years, the police department has typically returned somewhere between $1.2 and $1.8 million back to the general fund each year. Last fiscal year 2020, what's reported to us, and this is something that I asked Mr. Hiller for information on, and unfortunately he wasn't able to provide to me before tonight. All of a sudden last year, the actual spending in full-time payroll was about $4.2 million, which was pretty close to what was budgeted. And I'm having trouble figuring out how that's possible when I think for most of fiscal year 2020, you didn't have even 50 sworn officers, let alone 58. So I guess my question is in 2 parts. One is that accurate?
Dave and I show for last year for regular payrolls for sworn officers, $4,226,000.
Right.
So that would be accurate, and I don't believe that has been changed by audit.
So what?
Our budget has
How is that
only
possible?
increased by like $63,000. I believe we were funded for 58 officers in 2020, which is the same as now. So I'm hoping to reach that goal, and which I'm pretty sure we will be able to. We have an active certified list right now. Within the next couple of months, we're going to be hiring several officers.
Great.
So potentially by the end of this month, we will have 58, so that without looking towards the past, I don't want to make any presumptions, toward the future, that's what we're funding for, that's what we need.
Right. I understand what you're saying as to what you anticipate coming up for this year. What I'm not understanding is how the department was able to spend $4.2 million funding the regular payroll of 50 officers, and I'm not even sure that it was 50 for most of that year. It might have dropped below 50.
Potentially.
And the total budget has been somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.8 million.
I believe you had this question probably a couple of years ago. With your budget goal is 58, we do everything in our best to hire 58. Sometimes we can't anticipate any problems that we're going to have throughout the year. Sometimes we can't anticipate exactly what is going to stop us from the hiring during that year. But if it's 58, that's the number that should allocate and be approved for 58 officers in there. I really don't understand your question.
That's not, right, I'm not asking that question. What I'm asking is, how many officers did you have on regular payroll for fiscal year 2020?
I believe we had probably approximately 50. And we were reaching the goal 58. That's what we already said.
Right. I mean, Mr. Hiller, maybe you can provide us at some point with some information about how this adds up.
Payroll department and human resources.
I think that will probably help to answer my question, because I don't want to ask Mr. Sakara if he's not able to answer that question. I mean, frankly, every year we've sat here and asked the question about why there aren't 58 officers, and we've gotten a variety of answers to that question. Every year the answer is we're trying to hire, we're doing background checks, people aren't passing the background checks, people have left to go to other departments. We've never gone over 50 officers. So I'm having a hard time figuring out why, again, we're going to park money in this payroll item that, in all likelihood, is not going to be spent.
Well, some of your statements are correct. We were over 50 officers. When I joined the police department here, I believe we were at about 58. And I believe the last couple of years, you do ask probably the same questions, repetitive, but those are the answers. I understand you probably don't accept that, but it is the answer. It's a challenge sometimes to hire qualified individuals, and sometimes we'll face challenges. But if our goal is 58 to hire, that's what we need in the budget.
So it seems that this problem is a yearly problem, a recurring problem that hasn't received a settlement as of yet. Money is allocated, and the intent is to hire officers, but this doesn't really transpire, it would seem.
I want to consider a problem. It's just the challenges that go through in any police department. You hire those police departments right now that, depending upon what their contracts are, people are transferring out of their departments. They have their own department issues as any other department. I find it that if that's the number you're at 58, we're going to do our best to get there, and that's what we should. I mean, we put the safety community first. That's the number that we've come up to, especially in pursuant to accreditation, and it's a good figure. It's a good figure. We can't argue that we've done the best we can with what we have at any and all times. I mean, we've moved down to the 5th safest city. We're recognized, and we're also accredited. I mean, our department is open to the public. It's open to the state. The state actually comes down when you're accredited, and they go through your entire department. They've been through these books and looked through things more than any of the folks on the A&T board with us. And we seem to be in good standing. We're moving forward. I'd like to push it. I think we can actually get to that number 58. I think we can get to it before the fiscal year.
How many officers have left the Shelton Police Department in the last 2 years?
There were 2 officers that transferred out.
Voluntarily?
Yes. What other way would they leave?
Well, you've also terminated officers.
Well, that's funny you should say that. I recognize this line of question, and I also do recognize that you specifically have publicly aligned yourself with the officers who were fired for misconduct, serious misconduct, as well as you publicly aligned yourself with the ones with your election of duty. So I do understand. You may have a political agenda, but the safety of the community is here first in the Shelton Police Department. We never expected And you are right, we are never expected that we would have officers at all to fire 6 officers. All of them had a history, well, most of them had a history of discipline. I'll give you an example. We have one officer. We've never expected that he would leave his patrol zone unattended without permission of his supervisor, to head back to the police department and take a picture of a female coworker without her permission. We've never expected that. Unfortunately, that meant the state guidelines of harassment. Wasn't a bad individual, just made a bad decision. Unfortunately, that was a misconduct and that person was terminated. Another officer, way before I even came to this department, had a previous history. He should have been arrested probably for a felony, because it is a felony. He ran a plate for personal use and lied that he was on duty. He ran a plate for personal use and lied that he was on duty. That same person, now, under my leadership and administration here, there was complex and there was detailed and thorough investigation done by fellow union members. By some of them are in the back and investigated. 21 years in the department, discovered that individual lied, fasted. And when he should have been on his patrol zone, decided to snap a picture and then lie about it, whether he was working or not, of a coworker in his underwear. It's inappropriate. So we have misconduct. But what's really appalling, what I find to be really appalling out of everything, was that you specifically actually did a GoFundMe page for those officers. You have a political agenda.
Well, we have a different view of how this should be resolved.
There is no view, which was most
Sean.
Okay,
Chief,
all right, I think
I'd
at this
like to-
point, coming from,
Jay,
all right, just a moment, please.
Sure.
Who's speaking?
Chris.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to dovetail. This is a budget meeting, and to have political agendas at this budget meeting is out of hand and out of control. And I want to applaud the chief and what he's done for this city, and shame on everyone that uses this platform for anything other than a budget. This is the same agenda as when I was on the A&T. It's out of control. Let's get moving on. I wake up at 3 a.m. for my job. So let's get moving on and stop with the political stuff.
And I agree 100%. Chief, I want to thank you very much for certainly what you and all your officers do here in our city. And coming from an emergency services background myself, I certainly understand everything that you're saying. So I certainly do appreciate it, Chief. Do you have anything further, Chief, to present?
Well, I just want to state for the record that it wasn't my intent to speak on the officers or fire misconduct, but it was brought out by Ms. Lawman, and I just can't just ignore. Some things are just appalling, especially when you see a GoFundMe page and you have someone misusing their position for their political propaganda. I mean, obviously it's bias, and your bias precludes you being objective, but especially when it came to that rape victim that was re-victimized. When the officers that did not do their job.
Is this going to continue, or are we going to get back to the budget? Because now you're using this platform.
Okay, let's
Mr. Chairman.
Let's come back to order here, okay? Let's come back to order. And Chief, if you don't have anything further at this point, I would say thank you very much for your time and all your answers. And let's move on to the next department.
I have a number of other questions about the budget that have been provided to Mr. Sakara in advance, and so far, the only thing that we've heard is his opening statement.
Well, I think at this point, if the chief is comfortable answering any further questions that are pertinent and related to budget, then I would certainly, invite him to do so. Otherwise, I think these questions could possibly be, put through email. Chief, what is it that you would feel you would like to do at this point?
I have no problem. I have her list of questions. Some of them seem to be repetitive from previous years. I have no problem just kind of going through just to help clarify. A lot of these, it just seems to be, like I said, repetitive, but I have no problem doing it. Question one and two. Obviously, okay. I explained we're going through the hiring process. We have 8 officers. Questions 1, as you see in certain areas that might not been spent, we're trying to get to that staff, 58 officers. So obviously we would need the money in the budget to maintain that. Question 3, as far as the census and the 2% pay, we currently have the 5 lieutenants I stated, 8 sergeants, 3 detectives. There's currently no police contract signed. I do not partake in the negotiations of police contracts, and that's out of the mayor's office. Question 4, you asked for dispatchers. We have 6 full-time dispatchers. We're budgeted for 7. We have 5 part-time dispatchers. You cannot do an average of the week. The part-time dispatchers, the way their salary is if they're available. They basically fill in a shift for when a full-time dispatcher is not available. Number 5, you asked regarding, and I find this an unusual question, you asked who is in different positions, who exactly are in name, and looking for a name from other individuals, I found kind of odd and strange. I'm saying we are pursuing a position towards advancing the accreditation, as I stated. It is handled, a lot of it can be handled by a civilian person, so I have requested a civilian administrator. Some of the things are civilian duties. I do believe if you're a cop and you're trained to be on the road, we try to put you out there for the most part. You saw a salary that's at $24 an hour for a full-time, for a full-time, which is less than a part-time, and that's just because you offer him incentives now and offer he or she health benefits and medical benefits. So therefore, sometimes we give a higher rate for the part-time, but then when you offer the medical and dental and they have vacation pay, it may decrease. Question number 6 you have here.
What is the civilian administrator position? I don't understand what that is.
What's that?
What is the civilian administrator position?
Well, currently we have an individual that works in records. Right now we're missing 1 part-time person in records, and a civilian administrator would kind of help with accreditation. This person would be more or less trained for grants, grant writing, as we have an individual now, runs collect and help on the records, and keeps kind of the PD organized on an accredited level.
This may go to a different question that I had later on, but I'm having trouble understanding the money that's being budgeted for the accreditation. You indicated that the police department has already been reaccredited.
We are reaccredited, but just like any accredited facility, it's all the same. Just like if you went to accredited college, just like the Board of Ed that's accredited, a preschool that may be accredited. When you're accredited, there's a cost that comes associated with maintaining that accreditation. And the state law now states you cannot just maintain it. You have to pursue accreditation level 1, that's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and federal accreditation. That's going to come with a cost. And that's why you might see some areas increase. You also might see some with wellness and officers. Having accreditation mandates you to have EAP. It mandates you, it's a state law. So we have to accrue the cost. Also, there's now with the new police accountability bill, there's certain wellness checks. There's certain psychological exams that weren't there that are needed every so often now with the officers. It comes with a cost.
What is the cost of the reaccreditation? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What is the thing that you need to do that costs money for reaccreditation that isn't covered by salaries, is my question.
Oh, we'll be here for days just on that answer. Accreditation, there's different levels in different minors. For example, you might have 1 through 150 for tier 1, you have to meet the criteria. And then you might have for tier 2, 150 to 300, you have to meet the criteria. So until you start encountering it, and we're looking to tier 2, unfortunately, as I previously stated in my opening statement, COVID kind of set us back a little bit, but as it's opening up, it's going to be an associated cost. I mean, hopefully we'll get to tier 2 recently. It's a large-term effect. I mean, obviously, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe it's about 5% of the police departments in Connecticut are accredited, and now they're being forced to be accredited, the remaining of the departments. So it's going to come associated with a cost. But as I said earlier, we have a history in the Shelton Police Department that we don't overspend our budget. We spend our money wisely. So at any given time, I feel confident enough if I need a transfer and I need something else, I have no problem coming through the AUT board and expressing why we need it and requesting those funds.
It would seem to me that the firing of the several police officers has ramifications more than and other than political. I think there are some financial implications to the disposition of or the reinstatement of those salaries. So I don't think this question is, as you say, a political question, I think there are definite financial implications here. Would you agree to that?
How so? How specifically?
Well, these salaries would have to be made up to cover the former salaries of the 6 individuals who was fired. So therefore, that's a financial matter as opposed to necessarily a political matter. So I think there needs to be some alteration of statements made. I think there are financial rather than political implications involved here.
Well, as I previously stated during my opening statement, that we terminated officers were 6 officers. We hired, I think I said in my opening statement, 11 new officers. Those officers, we already, I think, exceeded by 1 in our hiring process. So those salaries, those positions were almost filled immediately. But coming from yourself, making a statement like that may be so, may be right, and it's a legitimate question. But I don't observe you or notice you to have a political alignment with a certain group. When it comes from other people speaking it, there may be bias, and they may not be objective.
No, I just wondered about the political implications, the financial implications that might be involved here. Apparently, since you hired 11 people, those financial implications were minimal, but they do, at least for a time, did exist. So, the questioning does seem to be a legitimate one as per financial implications.
Well, and as you can see, the budget hasn't changed much from the previous year.
Yeah.
Okay, Chief, do you have any other questions that you feel need to be answered?
I think I pretty much summed it up. And,
okay.
If anyone has any questions, I thank you for your time and opportunity and allowing me to present the budget.
Well, I'm
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Chief. So you have a good night. And again, thank you for all that you do for the city.
Mr. Chairman,
all right, Paul, what does it look like we have for the next person in the audience?
Chairman, would some of the aldermen like to speak?
Oh, okay. Very good. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is McPherson. I'm just looking, I think there was some questions on the fuel, and the reason I mention it is you look at some of the areas now, we're already at $3 a gallon, if not more, and does the increase reflect those rising prices? Because we might be near $4 a gallon come the summertime.
That was an important question and statement. We believe to be inflated, and that's why we upped the price and the line item for the gasoline. I actually, was just speaking about that regarding today, as well as pistol permits have been going up, right? And they generate revenue. I think we generated maybe $116,000 already this year just for pistol permits. So therefore, you might see the pistol permit line item going out, but the revenue item offsets it when it comes in. So we're actually at a revenue. Thank you.
You also have an item in here for a K-9 officer, and we don't have a K-9 officer anymore, correct?
Was
We do not have a canine officer, but we are pursuing a dog handler. When I say a dog handler, that means it might not be a canine, it may be a lab, it may be a bloodhound. For other issues, I'm currently in discussions with the mayor. The academy starts September. If that academy doesn't work out, we'll look at the next nearest academy. I'm currently in discussions with the mayor regarding it.
Chief, this is Anthony Simonetti speaking. Thank you again, you and all your officers and all the staff for what you do for the city of Shelton. Thank you for being number 5. I think that's excellent.
Thank you for your time.
And I think we need to get that out too, because, that's a significant achievement. And as it is to be accredited, we have never, ever been accredited, I believe, in our history. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that, I think, is a substantial achievement, and it should be noted.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Like I said, the officers deserve the credit. They work hard. They're out there in the front line. Any support that I can give, I said if I need a transfer in the future that would benefit the department, I have no problem coming and sitting in front of here and asking for anything and further explaining it as long as I have to regarding what we need. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I would just ask Mr. Hiller to follow up on the items that we haven't been able to speak to this evening, since we're not able to answer all the questions tonight.
Okay, and Mr. Hillard, I'm sure we'll accommodate you with that. Mr. Hillard, do we have anybody else that's in the audience that is ready to speak?
Here, representing both planning and zoning and school bus.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I ask a little indulgence, because of a back injury, I'd like to sit at the table rather than stand. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
You need a microphone in front of you?
Yeah. Chair.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first speak to planning and zoning. As you know, I was the temporary administrator for some time and had worked with the new administrator on some budget items. Unfortunately, Mr. Rossetti has had some surgery and was not able to make it tonight. So with your indulgence, we'll go over the list of questions to see if I can answer.
What's the department?
This is budget 900.
Chance to do that.
I don't think I had a ton of questions. Well, I have a couple.
I'm sorry?
Sorry. Just looking at my questions.
Just as a little background, I believe, I know the Board of A&T and the work it does, it's a recommendation board, and you take a lot of time to do a recommendation. I happen to be chairman of this board for 8 or 9 years, so I'm very well versed in the process, and hopefully I can expedite some of these questions with you. Planning and zoning, 900, question 1, the payroll line item was funded at 285. The last year allocation was 263. Couple of things to clarify that is that one position was not filled, which is currently in the process of being filled. Also, the people that were made full-time were made at less than the salary level, and therefore there was a savings. In addition, the Commission hired a full-time administrative clerk, again, and that was included this year, but it was just started a little while ago. We intend to spend what was allocated. The positions that are currently being filled now. You have to remember that the planning and zoning, in my opinion, and served on a lot of committees, Joe, as you know, in this city, is one of the most important commissions in the city. It works very closely with the mayor and economic development in bringing cities, and it's resulted in substantial savings to the public due to the tax revenue. We currently have probably about $500 million in things that are on the table or going to be applied for. So some of this budget, you'll see some increase in it. The administrator finds it to be satisfactory. There are alternatives once we get to full staffing to make up some of those items that were cut. Mainly, the budget stays the same. There was very little that the mayor recommended to be cut, and he feels that we could live within this budget.
Okay.
Second question.
Can I just
I'll go
clarify?
through the questions and then maybe.
I just want to clarify number 1, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Are you just saying that there was a person who just started, and that's why this year you haven't expended the line?
That's correct. That was one, and then there were late starts in the budget from part-time to full-time.
Okay.
And then they were not funded at the level that was budgeted. They were decreased starting levels. So that all affected the expenditure of funds. The other thing is there's 2 payrolls that aren't included in this.
Yes,
So
I'm aware of that.
you have to do that.
That I think I factored in, but, yeah, this is the first time I think we've heard this piece about how the budgeted amount for salaries is at a certain pay grade level, but sometimes you're bringing people in at a lower level, I guess, of experience, and so you're not expending that entire budgeted amount sometimes.
You know, let me say from my experience that I think A&T and the rest of the city and the public have to remember that the budget as presented is just a blueprint of what could happen in the city. It's a first draft of something that has to go through the refinement process, and this is part of the process.
Absolutely. That's why we're here, right?
Well, that's why I'm here. The mayor's asked that it be explained, and that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Budget format, it indicates a request for $10,000 for special area study. That function will go on whether that $10,000 is appropriated. And the reason it can be done is because we anticipate filling the vacant position, so there'll be more staff input. You also say that hopefully that we can cut down on some of the consultant time, which is under personal services, and use that time in this particular area. So we're confident that this study, as needed, will be done. The mayor has also offered at times, because of some of the different projects, for example, Shelter Ridge, for example, the Moss property, that if consultants are needed in order to help the different commissions, that you'll look at that to see if that can be taken.
What constitutes special area study?
Special area studies, for example, the Moss property, you may want to do a special area study on what's the use of the Moss property, what should be the zone change. Downtown, should that be expanded? Right now, there's what they call overlays in planning and zoning. There's several overlays, Bridgeport Avenue, downtown, River Road. Should they be expanded based on the need? And the mayor is always out there recruiting new companies. Where should they locate? Zones have to be changed. So you constantly look at this. The other thing, there's a plan that has to be revised, I believe, every 6 years. And that plan will start data collection shortly. The planning and zoning through Alex in the mayor's office, Alex Rossetti, who's a new administrator, have embarked on a new software program where it will also be automated and people will be able to process things online. It also has a new mapping component when I get into the buses that's needed, and that will be part of it to make sure that all the streets are accurately mapped out with different functions for both the assessor, the engineer, planning and zoning. So it's automated. It started in the building department. They're on it. Next moves to planning and zoning, and then to engineering. So that's going to cut down and make the staff more efficient and able to do other things. And one thing is important is looking at some of the area stuff.
So it involves special consideration.
That's correct.
So I guess,
You know, people forget, there's a couple things to the commission, planning and zoning. And so the commission's embarking through the mayor's office to make sure that this property planned zones and the city is done so that it could expand in those areas that it needs to. That makes sense on that. So
you had budgeted for this, or asked for it to be budgeted, but it wasn't approved in the mayor's proposed budget. So that, I guess that was the concern,
Yeah.
unless I misunderstood.
But you had a question. The question was this. Can I call you? The question was, is it going to go on? Can you do it? My answer is absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, it may take a different form. It may take a little longer, but it's going to be accomplished.
Okay, so you're not concerned about the fact that that was not funded in the proposed
No.
budget? Okay.
No, I'm concerned it may take a little longer, but I don't think the statement that it's not going to be done is not a...
No, it was a question, not, as to whether or not, if this item isn't funded, then what happens?
Yeah.
Are we concerned about that? Should we be recommending?
It goes on,
something
it may be decreased in some of the scope of services that are asked for. There may be prioritization needing to take place. So it's looked at, that's the only thing I can answer. Number 3, zoning fees indicated that the current allocation of $3,000 has not been used at all, and yet $6,000. That's a state funding line item, and usually at the end of the year, it's adjusted. So the state has come out and said, you have to assess certain fees an additional $60. So as we go through the process, and you'll see when you look at the revenue that is projected at a much greater rate, 2 reasons. One, the commission approved a higher fee schedule, has not had a fee increase since 2014 on the fees coming in. And the second thing, the busyness of the commission and the applications that are coming in result in more of the $60. So we anticipate growing that much, but we're going to need that money to pay the state.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Printing and advertising. I'm sure this board knows or should know that the governor's executive orders, I'm sure you're familiarized with most of them, if not, you should, I would recommend. And it says that you don't have to publish legal notices and pay for advertisement. Under the executive order of the governor, you can do that by posting it on the website. And that is done weekly, that's done whenever it's needed, We put all the information of planning and zoning on 24 hours before, as per the executive order, and we post all those legal notices instead of publications onto our own website, which I'm happy to say is currently being revised. Michelle, okay?
Well, so I guess that just begs the question, though. We had $27,000 budgeted last year. Year-to-date expenditures are $1,200. It sounds like you're saving a lot of money by changing the way you're publishing the notices on the website instead of newspapers.
But we're doing that by executive order.
Oh.
Due to COVID.
Okay. So it's temporary.
So it's temporary, and we don't know
Got it.
what to do, so I would think the logical thing is to try to appropriate an amount of money that may be necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions?
There's just one more.
5 is, if you, I don't mind going on, Mr. Chairman. 5 is professional services, again, with the increase, that's going to be bumped up to $75,000. Our consultant of over 40 years is probably the best in New England. We hope to retain him. We use him when there's specific workshops that have to be answered on the professional. He did most of the writing of all of the regulations years ago and is the most knowledgeable person on that. So we anticipate, because of the increase.
What's the nature of the professional services in this instance?
This is Mr. Panico, who's been here for 40 years, who we hire on a personal services basis. In addition to that...
What is his area of expertise?
Everything.
Everything. Very broad.
Everything. That's an easy question to ask.
Expert of all things.
You never heard of Tony Panico?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Not my area.
Right, well, yeah, it should be. And in addition to that is when we have public hearings, we have to hire a specialized reporting transcriber, and that comes out of that line item.
Okay, so is it on the planning side, I'm assuming, the professional services? Is that what you're using?
Well, no, it's planning and zoning, because zoning questions come in. Again, you go to the expert that has the zoning background, and we check with our consultant when needed.
Okay, so he just answers questions for you on...
No, he does work, he works at it, spends hours on it. He reviews
I don't
every
mean
plan.
to minimize what he's doing, I'm just trying to understand what it is.
Okay, yeah, he does that.
Okay, thank you.
The mayor's constantly on it to try to save money and cut down on, just when you need to do it, and that's the philosophy we have. Are we all done? I think we're all done on planning and zoning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. I want to thank you very much, sir, and make sure you take care of that back, huh?
Well, we still have questions about the buses, right?
Yes, if I can get my notes. It seems to me that, first I just want to say some remarks. The philosophy that we have in the student transportation services is a philosophy that everyone should understand, that goes to the heart of providing these services. And that is, as we start off every year, we tell the bus drivers that you carry the most important commodity in the world. You carry our children. And you need to concentrate on making that the most efficient, the most important, the safest. Your job is to get the students to there in a safe manner and get them home. These bus drivers are dedicated. They're part of these kids' families. If we have a substitute in there, then some of them get upset because Pam isn't the driver. George is the driver. So that's the philosophy that we carry through. The reason this came about was to provide more funds for education. $1.2 to $1.4 million savings. The agreement that the mayor mediated through the court system, and I was part of that, is the savings. Today, you would be paying over $4 million, probably 4.2. The mayor agreed to keep the rate at the 2018 expenditure level. And I believe that's $3.150 million. Further, by court mediation and decree, it further states that if there is any overage in that amount, that the city will pay for it. where it's an understanding, it's an agreement. The city goes out and we're doing what we need to do to provide that service. We're really charged with transporting almost 4,300 students. Now, the problem is with COVID, and most of our problems, if not all of our problems, you must all remember this, in my opinion, is COVID related. Last year, what problems do you have with student transportation? What complaints did you get? Very few. September, very few complaints. It's when COVID hit and affected not only every person in this country, but most importantly, it affected every department, and we had to operate differently. I just want to finish this presentation by saying, I want to deal with facts. I'm not here to answer any political questions. I'm not here for any political purposes. I'm here to present the facts. Because I hear some aldermen, I wish Mr. Gadwani was here, and other people that question the bus services in this country, in this city, but don't base it on any facts that they know about. How could you do this? Our students are affected. The parents are affected. Do you think we want to leave one student that we can't provide service to? 2 weeks ago, there were 10 school systems in the state that could not operate because they didn't have enough bus drivers. This is not a city problem. This is not a state problem. This is a country problem. There's a shortage. For every bus driver, it takes 2 to 4 months to train, to put through, to get certified. We are one of the highest paid in our region. It's not the pay. With the federal government providing unemployment at the rate they do, it's sometimes easier to stay home and make more money than go to work every day. And that's a COVID-related problem. Let me just tell you how that's affected us. We have 56 routes. We employ 63 drivers. We put on spares. We put on more than we needed to. Why? In case some of them don't show up. Why are some of them out? At any given time, there's 16 to 20 drivers that we had committed that are out. Long-term, short-term. If I can find that, I can tell you what the breakdown is. So that, you know what, we get facts out. Because it does get tiring to read in the paper and read the criticism of busing when it's not based on any factual data.
So Shelton is among the, I think you said 10 communities that are facing this problem.
Absolutely not. No, you didn't listen. I said in the last 2 weeks, there were 10 communities in Shelton that had to cancel school because they didn't have enough bus drivers. This is Shelton Student Transportation has never had to cancel school due to a lack of bus drivers. We never canceled school. In March, and I think it's important that you hear this so that you get a budget grasp on this. Am I going too fast for you to type?
No.
Okay. In March, there was 1,270 runs.
You're going too fast for John. Slow down.
In March, there were 1,270 runs. That means from the time a bus leaves and goes on his route, right, that's one run. For the whole month, there were 12,070. The Shelton Student Transportation, and it's too much if we miss one. But the facts are we missed 3 full-time routes, and we missed 3 part-time routes out of 1,270. For the COVID reasons, and we're down so many drivers, that's excellent. Not something we want to live with, and that's why we're doing things to make sure it doesn't happen. And the mayor's been in the front of it. We're up at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to make sure that we have enough drivers or vendors to fill the routes. In April, to date, there were 719. 6 full runs were missed, and 4 runs were out.
What is the difference?
Unacceptable. Go ahead.
What's the difference between the missed runs and when you say a run was out? What is that? What's the
Well, I
difference?
said there were 2 types, a full-time run, meaning you miss the morning bringing to school and the afternoon bringing out.
Okay,
The part-time where you just missed one of those, either the morning and the
okay,
afternoon.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you just bear with me, I think it's important to, and I have it here, so I found it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree, any more than more than you have said already, because it is an important thing, and it's
Drivers out, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, 16 to 20 drivers out. What's the summary? 6 were out for specific COVID reasons. We have no control over it. It's all COVID related. They had elderly parents that are 95. They didn't want to take the chance with getting contaminated that time before the vaccine and going home and giving it to their parents. There were some that have young children and didn't want to send them to daycare. There were 4 medical, serious back injury, broken leg, wrist broken. There's a medical standard that we have to uphold that people don't understand. 3 left employment. They left. 1 died unexpectedly on this. And 2 lacked the certification necessary to finish and be a driver. All COVID related. Everything. And now we miss 3 runs. And what do? We do a lot of things. We start the night before having staff meetings to see what we need to cover and how we're going to cover that. It goes to 4:45, the manager's in, working on it again. 5 o'clock, we're having a little phone conference to find out where we're standing. And if we can't, we have to notify the school. I want them notified early so the parents have a chance to make their day. And that's what we do every single day.
So budgetary considerations.
Budgetary considerations don't enter into this. And I just want to answer that, Joe, because at the statement, Michelle, that you made, said you had a lot of questions, but you supplied none. You supplied me none.
I actually did ask questions. They're on page 13 of
I couldn't find
the
them.
document. It says Shelton Student Transportation Company, Ken Nappy.
Yes. Well, we can go through it, but keep in mind, the only budget item that this board deals with is $3.150 million. And that's not broken down because that's an agreement. We provide the services for $3.15 million. Anything over that, the mayor's agreed to take.
Right, you seem
Not broken down into line items.
You're assuming a lot about what questions I have without actually, would you like to take a minute to look at the questions
No,
that I
I'll go through
actually
them one
have?
by one, yeah.
Can I ask a question just to go through? So the bus company is $3.1 million. You have that, but are you, as a city bus company, are you using city employees to do the repair of the buses?
They're all city employees that are employed.
Okay.
We have 62 drivers, 20 monitors, and 2 mechanics. I do employ, meaning the city, we do employ outside help if we need some routes covered and people are able to handle. We have one company that's family-owned, that they've been very good. The owner goes out and drives the bus to help us out and cover.
Okay, I understand. So when we're looking at other departments, just so you understand where we're coming from, is we're looking at highways or maintenance and stuff like that, and we're seeing them ask for full-time or part-time employees, but some of them are actually working for the bus company, am I correct?
No, who's that?
I don't know specifically, because I don't know.
Well, where'd you get the information? You must tell me.
But when we're looking at full-time employees and part-time, who are you using to maintain the buses? That's why.
Our own people employed by the city. They're part of the $3.15 million.
So it's difficult to see that in the
Well,
budget.
because that's the board agreement.
But shouldn't we have a budget line item, John, or something?
All right, Paul, could you?
That was set by the court, that was agreed by the Board of Aldermen, Board of Education, and you have to look at that as a personal service contract. This is the services that we're to provide. This is the amount of money that we provided for.
Okay, and so you.
Let me just say another thing. Go ahead, John.
May I answer my question?
Yes, please.
Do you remember a company by the name of Durham?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing Durham's details?
I'm sure that it had been
Line
shared
item,
on their
line
bid.
item? No, you didn't.
Okay, I didn't see it because I wasn't.
You didn't see it because they didn't provide it.
Okay,
This is the same kind of agreement that Board of Ed made with Durham, they made through the courts with us.
okay.
And we don't have to provide it, we have to just guarantee the service at $3.15 million a year.
Okay.
Not to go over.
Yeah, not to over, we pick up, the city is responsible to pick up any additional cost, and they can't pass it on to the Board of Ed.
Okay.
I think we're having difficulty with is that we don't see in the line items in the budget, there are people who are employed. I mean, you just said we have.
But that fluctuates.
We have however many, I think you said 63 drivers and 20 monitors, and so there are concrete expenditures that are being made from the budget, and we don't get budget backup materials that say,
But
the way we do with.
I'm not trying to be adversarial.
I think we do,
We need to be
respectfully.
partners
What I'm
on this.
asking for you to do is to tell us the same breakdown of staff that we get for every other department in
But
the
that's
city.
not what it's about in this land, if I can finish. First of all, I'm not being adversarial. This should be a partnership between the administration, the A&T, the Board of Aldermen. That's what we're here for, to see what we can do. I don't want to get on the political nature, but it's an agreement. It's a contract. It says, I will provide this services, I will paint this room for $150 an hour. You don't say, well, how many painters are you going to stand? What time limit are you going to do? You have something that guides that. And it's the same thing that the court said. We went to it, we negotiated with it, the Board of Education agreed with it, the mediator judge signed off on it.
Right, and this is the last year of the contract, correct?
No, next year.
This upcoming year.
That's correct.
Fiscal year 2022
Starting
is
in
the last
September.
year of the
Right.
contract. So we are in this position. I couldn't agree with you more. We are trying to be understanding and collaborative in this process of overseeing the finances of the city, which is what we're charged to do.
No, you're not charged to oversee them based on my experience. You're charged to recommend different things that.
And that is correct. We are charged to
can
recommend.
act
David
as this
Gidwani.
process
Join the meeting.
but pass a budget, right? And in so doing, we have to understand what the city is spending its money on.
But you have no choice in this case.
I
Because it was a court
understand
agreement.
that there is an agreement, and I understand that there's a single line item in the budget that says $3.1 million. What I am trying to understand, and I hope that you'll help us to understand, is what are the actual costs that are associated with running the transportation system so that we understand what are the costs of the staffing, what are the costs of the
That's
buses,
included.
what are the costs of the mechanics?
I don't want to
Because
belabor my presentation.
Let me just finish, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Because these are the questions that I asked that unfortunately you haven't gotten a chance to look at yet. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to look at them and to respond to them. There's going to come a time when this city is going to have to decide whether or not to continue with this system, right? We have 1 year remaining on this contract. If we have no understanding of what the actual costs are associated with running this system, we cannot make a decision as to whether or not it should continue. So I don't want there to be this opaqueness to what's happening right now. I want there to be transparency so everybody can understand what the costs are associated with running the system right now.
You want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
We have a contract, an agreement through the court system to provide a level of services at $3.15 million. Whether we have 60 or 65 drivers, it still goes under the $3.15 million. There's a level of services that we're supposed to provide. And I just explained that we've had provided that, except for the COVID that came on unexpectedly. And everybody has to keep that in mind. Again, it's like a personal service contract that you enter into and say, paint this room. You're painting it for $1,500. You don't ask how many painters. You say, what time is it going to be done? What's this? That's part of it. The figures that you have in front of you are figures from 2018. Let me remind you that it's 2021. And the city is giving the Board of Ed the services at the 2018 level. If it were today, it would be, in fact, when they bid it in 2018, over $4.3 million. I can't be too specific on that. That's a lot of difference. That's a $1.4 million difference. That's the savings. So I guess when it's time to renew, the Board of Education will make their recommendation before it ever comes to the Board of Aldermen. And they'll base that
How
on
can
that.
they do that if they don't have the information that I'm asking for right now?
Okay, I think at this stage of the game,
Satisfied with what their agreement holds for them.
So help me understand, when we're looking at the
Okay.
line items in the current budget, where are the drivers? Where is the full?
They're in the $3.15.
Right,
It fluctuates. It fluctuates from 60 drivers, 64. I'm in the process of hiring 8 more. It's still our responsibility to do that at $3.15 million.
So what you're telling us is that there are no, I just want to understand,
Sure.
there are no other line items in the budget that we're looking at right now, the proposed budget, that have anything to do with Shelton school buses or running the school?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you're familiarized with the budget over 2 years. There's a line item called maintenance, it's $100,000. There's line items that charge for sports activities. That's in the budget, it's both in revenue and expenditures. That's been in there since the beginning, and I'm sure you people are familiarized with that since you work on the budget.
Are there other line items, are there personnel that are employed by the bus
No, it's all under the $3.15 million. And we're currently in contract negotiations, because it's a union job.
Can you tell us how much has been spent on payroll to date
No.
in fiscal year 2021?
Why is that so important?
okay, I think at this stage of the game, the questions have been asked and they've been answered, and I think we keep belaboring the same point of all the questions that have been answered at this point. So I feel that, unless there's anything further with respect to busing or anything else after that, I think we should just move on. If you have any more questions, I would then suggest that you send them off to him and have it, and/or the Board of Aldermen,
Jay,
and have those questions answered.
In the interest of time, I think this is an important subject that we need to discuss in detail. Each of us has points to make, and I think it ought to be, we ought to have the opportunity to make them.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Before I lose the microphone.
There are 2 major costs.
Oh, wait a minute. I think Mr. Angley says one final thing.
If I could just say, at the end of next year, when the contract is up, the Board of Education is going to go out for bids. They're going to go out and bid the service. And when they get their bids, they're not going to come in with details. Whoever the companies are that are bidding it, not going to come in with details, nor are they going to provide the number of drivers, what they're spending it on. They're just going to come in with a number, just like they've done in the past. So I just don't see the importance of belaboring the idea of what is the city doing. The city is fulfilling its contractual agreement that was agreed on at the court settlement. And we have been flexible in terms of our needs and doing what we have to do to meet that requirement.
Joe Nappick, I think what's being called for here is some delineation and some clarification as per school bus expenses. I think that's what the drive here is. If that could be provided, that would avoid a lot of this A, B, C, D, B squared, whatever you want to call it stuff. Clarification and delineation, if that could be provided, I think this whole bus financial situation would be in a lot better condition.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I think at this stage of the game that we don't need to keep on belaboring the point and continuing to go. We understand what you're trying to say. I think a lot of these questions have been answered. Okay, so I feel that if there's any more questions that you have, sir, you know, to answer with respect to the busing and contracts or anything else. You know, I think we should draw to an end here.
Actually, I have a question. This is Alderman David Gidwani. I would like to know where the excess went when BOE paid for services not rendered.
What excess?
The excess dollars, where did they go when the buses were not functioning, when kids were at home, learning from home, and not going to school? Where did the money go?
What money?
What do you mean, what money?
Yeah, what money? It's a contract, personal services contract. It says you will provide $3.15 million. Anything over, the city will assume. There are other costs.
Who is talking to me?
There are other costs which you're probably not familiar with, but all of unemployment is spent on this particular item through the city. It's paid out of the bus thing.
Right, but the drivers got laid off, right?
Yeah, but we paid them.
Didn't the drivers get laid off?
Yeah, we paid them. We paid the unemployment.
You guys paid the drivers?
We paid the unemployment for the drivers that took unemployment, yes.
And
absolutely.
Is it true or is it not true that about a week ago when Shelton kids had to travel to play games, sports, there were no buses available for them?
That's not true. I don't know where you're getting your information from.
Excuse me?
I don't know where you're getting your information from. We were unable to cover, I think, 2 games, which were rescheduled. The other games were all covered either by vendors or by us, with someone dropping off, a bus company, and us picking them up. Part of the problem with the sports activity, which I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with the athletic director, and we talk constantly with other bus companies that have the same type of schedule, is that we can't free up drivers at 1:30 in the afternoon or 2:30 in the afternoon to take the sports trip, because we need to cover with the COVID our school to home. That's our priority.
Well, this bus company that the city has been running is basically been a joke. So.
Well, that's your opinion. I'm sorry.
It's not my opinion. It's opinion about all the taxpayers in Shelton who have kids going to school.
Let's be respectful. I think we need to just, you know, cut the political stuff to an end here. Okay.
I get the complaints, and there's not have been a lot of direct complaints to us. I understand you get complaints, or some other aldermen, or some A&T people, but that's not brought to our attention. I'm in daily contact with the chairman of the Transportation Committee. I'm in daily contact with the Board of Education. We have a process for receiving complaints. So I don't know where the documentation goes. Yes, we missed 2 or 3 sports trips. They had to reschedule. But our responsibility is to try to get all of the kids to school and homeschool. And if you were on when I pointed to the statistics, you'll see that we're pretty good in actually providing that service during the COVID. I can't even we sent bus drivers to get their examinations. I can't get the information who got the shots and who didn't. We're not allowed to get that.
You know what? At the end of the day, taxpayers are going to voice this at the ballots this November, and we will be looking at that. What does this have to do with the budget?
I came here to try to present the facts that I have, and I think that I've done that. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson.
And I agree. I think you have done that as well. And unless you have anything further to say, I think that the time has come that we adjourn this meeting.
Well, we still have a number of other questions relating to other departments aside from Mr. Nappy's, so.
David, I'd like to say one thing. You had a comment here about bus safety. All the buses are inspected by the Department of Motor Vehicle. All the buses are certified. We have a system and process and system that there has to be a pre-inspection under law. That's done, and anything that's found is corrected either that day or the next day. But no bus goes out in an unsafe condition, nor one that has not been certified by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
What is the profit that the city is making on the buses that they're, billing the BOE?
The BOE is getting billed $3.15 million under the agreement made with them I think you're a businessman. I think you realize what a personal service contract is. Again, if you're going to paint this room, and they say the bids are $1,500, you don't ask how many painters. You say $1,500, yes or no.
This is a city department, and we don't have any other city departments where we don't get to see the line items relating to employees and mechanical failures.
There has been no problems with mechanical failures. I take offense with that also. I just told you.
Well,
all the buses are certified. Every
vehicle needs to be repaired. That's what I'm referring to.
Say what?
No matter what automobile or vehicle we're talking about,
right.
Mechanical failures happen, so we need repairs, right?
And that's under the $3.15 million. And if we go over that...
For every other city department, we have line items that tell us, this is what we're spending on full-time.
This is not every city department. This is one that went to court. This was one that was mediated, and this was one that was agreed to by the Board of Education and the city.
The price of the contract was mediated.
And the judge, thank you.
The price of the contract was ordered, but not how we reflect it in our budget. We do not have, and I do not believe that it is best practice from a budgeting standpoint, to have a city department for which we do not have itemized line items for personnel and other budgetary items. And that is what we are asking for. And that's the information that I'm asking you to provide here tonight.
Why do you treat that differently than any other contract?
Because this is a city department
now. This is
a
contract that was approved. I can't speak to that. This was a contract that was approved. It was approved at $3.15 million. It wasn't approved
from how it is operating. It's operating as a city department. The city asked
under specific conditions of the court.
And we've created a department, and we've created this employment network, and we do not have it reflected in our budget. That is not okay.
I can't speak to why it wasn't done. The court had ruled, the Board of Education agreed to it. It was a one item, and the item was not to exceed.
We didn't even have a line item in the budget until we insisted on it last year.
I can't speak to that. I'm trying to operate the buses
under the contract and the settlement has nothing to do with how we reflect it in our budget. That's our responsibility. And our responsibility is to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for. And I don't know how we're supposed to do that when we don't have these items itemized. The other thing I just want to say
I think that's different than the Board of Education budget also.
The governor's executive order required that school districts and bus companies enter into negotiations about whether or not contracts were going to be paid. I'm not aware that that happened. What I am hearing, and I'd like your comments on this, is that drivers were laid off.
No driver was laid off. No driver was laid off. The drivers, when we began this process, asked if they can get unemployment insurance, unemployment compensation. During Christmas breaks, anytime there was no work, they wanted the right to go to unemployment and receive the unemployment benefits.
So
let me finish. That's what we upheld. They all went to unemployment and got total unemployment, which the city paid, number one. Number two, we looked at that, and they made more money going to unemployment than if we had to pay them. So if you want to tell the bus drivers, don't go to unemployment, we'll pay you your salary, which is less than you can collect. I don't believe that's a sound business decision.
So whereas I think this is the concern, and I welcome your response to this, Mr. Nappy. The concern is that because the drivers were unemployed, right, they were collecting unemployment, rather than continuing to be paid by the bus company, which was the model that happened for other communities during the COVID pandemic.
That's not entirely true.
I'm quite familiar with many of those communities, so I will just say that is true. And the reason for that, and the reason for the governor's executive order, was that the drivers were supposed to be available once school was back in session so that they could drive the buses again, rather than being laid off and on unemployment. So there's a concern that because Shelton operated differently and the drivers were collecting unemployment, that they were not then available once school was back in session again. That's the concern.
Right. They were available. They were available. However, there were a certain amount of people that decided that They needed to understand COVID, and I explained the reason why the 16 are out. So I don't know what you mean by unavailable. And we got replacements for them.
Some drivers, right, when they're unemployed, would have gone to work for other companies, was the concern. So they were no longer employees of the Shelton Transportation.
Let me tell you, when we took over this, there were 6 drivers that went with Durham. Let me tell you that those 6 drivers are back with us.
Okay, so you're saying that was not a problem for Shelton?
No, I'm saying COVID was the problem, not the unemployment, because they got more money being unemployed than they did if we paid them.
Okay, and they were all available to
And
come back?
there was nothing that came in either to the mayor's office, to Mr. Basher or myself, that said, where's my money? You know, why aren't we getting paid? Don't forget, they got 300 twice, plus the other supplements for unemployment. You have to understand how they work. They work by part-time. So they may drive 1 route, and it lasts for 2.5 hours. And then they may not drive in the afternoon. Then they may drive 2 in the afternoon, 2 routes, and none in the morning. So it fluctuates as to how many hours. They don't put in more than 5 half hours for the majority of them.
Are you able to tell us whether or not the expenditures associated with the bus company were under $3.15 million, were equal to $3.15 million, or exceeded $3.15 million?
Well, I believe they're going to be on their expended of $3.15 million.
You think they're going to be under by the end of this year?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you projecting for next year?
No, because the contract's the same, $3.15 million.
Right, but remember, part of the agreement was that if it went over, that the city absorbs that cost, right?
That's right.
That cost comes out of this budget somewhere.
If it's over.
Yes. So what I'm asking you
So based
is,
on
since
past experience of 2 years.
we're now trying to budget, right, and we've had 2 years on this contract that have been partially affected by the pandemic.
1 year, mainly. The first year wasn't.
For the upcoming year, what information can you tell us that will reassure us as to whether or not we need to budget for additional expenditures in the city budget beyond the $3.15 million?
Based on past experience, we believe that the $3.15 million will be sufficient.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Simonetti. May I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Simonetti.
My honest answer.
Go ahead, Mr. Simonetti, you can speak.
From what I grasp from what this conversation is, that the city has given a very nice deal to the Board of Education. They're saving about $1 million a year, and they're not being asked to return that to the city unless they don't spend the money that they get in their budget. The city is providing the service that was required by the court agreement. The court agreement did not say they had to divulge what they're spending in any way, shape, or form. The city does agree that if there is more expenses than 3.15, they will not get it from the Board of Education. The money will come from somewhere in the city budget. But from what I can see, the budgeting has been very well done with the cost of the city bus company, and Mr. Nappy and his crew has done an excellent job in running the service with missing very few runs at all, and knowing that when a school changes a schedule because a team can't play or whatever, sometimes the buses wouldn't be available the next time that they wanted them because of the way they're tied up with doing other things. So I think we commend Mr. Nappy and the bus drivers and crews down at the city bus yard, and commend the Board of Education for getting a sweet deal. And then with a new negotiating time coming up, we shouldn't be trying to put any numbers anywhere. And that the Board of A&T is going to recommend a budget. They don't set a budget. The Board of Aldermen set the budget.
Respectfully, Mr. Simonetti, I think we should reread the charter because that's not accurate. We did set a budget.
It's exactly accurate.
We set a budget 2 years ago. We set a budget, and it was undone by the Board of Aldermen. That wouldn't have been necessary if it
You don't have the right nor to set a budget. You don't have a right to recommend a budget. Please understand that.
Okay. Well, then we did something that we didn't have the authority to do 2 years ago, and you had to...
You don't have an authority to set a budget, only to recommend a budget, and last year you walked out.
That's true, because you weren't allowing us to do this. We had no information, even less information than we have tonight.
What we need
I
is
hope I
an account.
provided.
Are there any further questions? Are there any further questions?
Yes, I have a
that need
question
to be
for,
answered?
I have a question for
If I might,
Mr. Simonetti.
comment here. What we need is an account description of the functioning, of the contract regarding the, city operation of the bus company. Then we will know what's going on and be able to make recommendations, as such. There's nothing better than information to make a decision on, and if we could have this information and account description, that would be a help.
Mr. Chairman, only I can say to this is that this is a 3-year agreement. So it's not going to be debated whether you pay less or more next year, because it's agreed upon at $3.15 million. That's the only point I'm trying to make with you.
Right, I agree. I agree that's been said. The point's been taken.
Budget for if there's an over expenditure, and we don't know the likelihood of an over expenditure because we don't actually know how much has been spent.
Yes, I said that my projections are that they will be under expend. You asked me that question, I answered it.
But we don't have anything upon which to base that projection, right? There's no numbers in front of us that show us what the current expenditures are. For every other city department, we have those numbers.
Well, that's an agreed upon.
What was spent in fiscal year 2020? What was spent in fiscal year 2021?
That's an agreed upon amount. Again, you're an attorney. You know what contracts are. Somebody gets a contract with your legal firm. They don't say how many paralegals you're going to put on, how many attorneys you're going to set it to. No, this is what it's going to cost you to provide this legal services. And you have to look at it, which I'm sure you're capable of doing the same way. The questions could be asked during a renewal. I don't control that. It goes to the Board of Ed.
I guess we're going to
It's a part of the Board of Ed's budget,
We're just going to have to.
And keep in mind, you're arguing about saving $1.2 million.
We don't know whether or not we're saving $1.2 million because we don't know if more than that has been spent.
I just told you, last year was the same, and this year there'll be under expenditure, so I don't want what you don't understand.
So maybe Mr. Hiller can provide us with the information that we're looking for from the actual accounts of the city, because...
Everything's charged to that one account. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Hillard, was that you that just said that everything was charged to that same account?
No, that was Mr. Nappy.
That was
It's charged to that one account. The only two major items that I would point out that are included within the Board of Education budget is the Board of Education pays for the fuel, and they also pay for the cost of the monitors for the buses.
So, Mr. Hiller, do you have the numbers in front of you as to what has been charged against that account for fiscal year 2021?
one other area is sports. It's a special account.
Okay, Mr. Hillard, are you able, would you certainly provide that to her, via email at this point, and/or Mr. Nappy? Because it seems that, we're continuing to belabor, a point instead of moving on.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment. It's McPherson. I don't remember in the past this information was requested from Durham or Landmark or whoever else had the contract prior. It just seems that because we're doing it, and we're trying to make some kind of a political point here, the judge made it clear, the judge signed off on the agreement, the Board of Ed approved it, and Mr. Nappy stated it repeatedly, that it's 3.15.
Mr. Hiller, do you have the figure that I asked for what has been charged against the line item for fiscal year 2021?
To date, and as I indicated earlier, the total budget for the department, which is Department 4200 in the sheets distributed, both the Board of A&T and the Board of Aldermen, has been expended $1,582,000. That does not include any money yet for athletic transportation. That does not include any money for field trips that might have been. As Mr. Nappi indicated, we have been providing transportation. That has not been billed, or that has not been segregated.
Great.
But on the part for, there is a line item for bus parts and repair for $100,000, in which $97,556 has been spent. On the daily student transportation, and again, I remind you, as I did earlier, these figures are not up to current.
Right.
$1,484,000 has been spent, primarily be personnel costs and unemployment costs included within that.
And is that similar to fiscal year 2020, or do you not have that in front of you?
2021. I do not have with me the figures for previous year, fiscal 20.
Can you get that for us, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
If I may, there's some things that I think as we progress here, we kind of put in the background and forget about. And under the old system where we went out to bid, we were paying a vendor a profit in that bid. We were also paying $1 million in that bid per year for the quantum buses. When we took over the school buses, and that cut the cost down a lot on an annual basis. So all this money isn't saved by the city. It's saved for the city, for the taxpayers of the city. It's a question of, unfortunately, having to get to this point, we had to go to court. And this is the agreement to come out of court. We're trying it for 3 years. It was a 3-year agreement.
Any surplus, that's a good point. Any surplus that's realized because of savings or efficiency or below cost is money returned to the city. It's not that somebody profits it like it's a private concern.
We
City
understand.
money.
We're just trying to figure out where the money is going. And
It's going towards providing that services, I keep telling you.
The point was made
upon.
earlier that the money was going towards, any savings was going towards education. And I understand the
I
point.
didn't say that. I said the savings from what the contracted rate was to what the mayor decided to charge, which is 18 rates.
I was
that
just
money,
about to say that.
That money.
I understand. That's the savings that you're saying is going towards education.
That's correct.
Within the $3.15 million that's being allocated to the Board of Education and then paid back to the city essentially for transportation services, there may be savings within that is going to the general fund to pay other expenses. Yes, Mr. Hiller?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I also remind you that the city incurred costs starting in 2013 of purchasing a lease purchase agreement for roughly $5.5 million to purchase the fleet of 60 vehicles. That was paid off in calendar 2018.
May I ask, will we moving forward with this deal, will we need more buses to be purchased? Will they be bonded? How would this?
I don't have any idea about the fiscal payment of that. The mayor has authorized going out to bid for some smaller vans so that we can utilize a lower level licensee and we don't need a full CDL. We can readily get more drivers that way and they can do the small pickups. Also, we're looking into smaller vehicles for sports transportation. The reason that Alderman Gadwani is that we missed some of those was not because of a lack of buses, not because of any mechanical failure, not because of any certification, but there's a statewide shortage on bus drivers. And hopefully we're going to be out of that. I mean, I have 8 more that are going through the process. So does that 8 more mean I go to the board and say I need X number of dollars to do it? Well, absolutely not. Plus we have summer school.
So
you know what, Mr. Nappi? There is no other school district in Connecticut that I know of that has a shortage of drivers to drive the kids to a sporting event. So.
Well, I disagree with you, but I don't think this is the place to debate.
Okay.
Because you said you're
And I
Well, you brought up my name, so I'm defending my name, letting you know that.
I said that I wish Mr. Goodwani was here so that he could hear some of the answers.
Who's that? Mr. Loretti?
It's Mr. Nappy again.
Oh, it's Mr. Nappy again. Okay. Well, as far as I know, that there are no other school districts in Connecticut that are having problems transporting the kids to sporting events, and that's where I'm going to rest my case. So, all the money that the city of Shelton made last year with not transporting kids, where is the money? Give it back to the Board of Education so they can hire teachers. They could pay the people who need to be at the schools for our children.
David, my job is to try to answer the questions and to answer them honestly, and that's what I'm trying and I'm doing. As far as any surplus, that's not my fight, my interest. My interest is to try to get everything and every kid, you missed probably at the beginning, to and from school in a safe manner. And that's what I'm dedicated to do. And I live within the contracts, and I live within that money. And you know me long enough that I tell it like I see it. And that's why I'm appearing here tonight, to try to clarify some of the points. Thank you.
Was the original contract supposed to include field trips and athletic transportation?
No, the original contract was for daily transportation. That's why there's separate numbers for sporting events. So we don't receive any extra money for sporting events.
Okay.
There's $3.3 million in the budget, including the
Well,
line
you asked me
item
the agreement was $3.15 million.
Right, so that's what we're trying to figure out. So that
Yeah.
the total amount in the budget right now is $3.3 million. When you add on the additional line items that were pointed out by Mr. Hiller, there are some things that are not included within the contract.
Right, and they're under the purview of the Board of Education. The only monitors we put on are the monitors that the Board of Education says has to go on. So it was not a contractual item because it fluctuated. It fluctuates. Before Mr. Belvin took control, there were 36 monitors. By working with us, we consolidated routes, we consolidated monitors, we consolidated buses, and we were able to bring the number of monitors that the Board of Ed would have to pay for, or the city, from 36 to 20. I think now it's going down to 15. So that was a savings both to the Board of Ed and ultimately to their budget and to the city. Same thing with sports activities. As you know, I mean, it's been in flux whether there's going to be sports activity or not. So if there's not sports activities, the Board of Ed is reaping the benefit of that particular line item. I just want to thank you for coming.
So the
Again, it's not adversarial.
Right.
You know, you're getting the facts as I know, and I hope I've been able to enlighten you in some matters. Thank you.
We had to be here. Well, thank you for coming. But I do have one question. Under that line item 4,200, these buses are aging. We didn't use them as much this past year, yet we show budgeting $100,000 to bus parks and repair, but we've used almost $98,000. So when they get back on the road, considering...
Well, they're all back on the road.
Okay. Considering their age, what's it going to be costing the city to keep these buses running and certified?
Well, let me just say that just because the bus doesn't run doesn't mean there's not expenses with that bus. Under state law, it's 3,000 miles or 3 months, regardless if they're used or not, that they have to be brought in, they have to be looked at, they have to be inspected. The brakes and tires are the same thing, yes, if you don't use them. We started rotating buses because we found the previous parties that managed it were using the same buses for the longest routes. So you get some buses that have 100,000 miles, I'm just giving you a number, and others that have 50. Doesn't make much sense. You need to rotate the buses so that we can get more life out of all the buses, and that's what we've implemented on it. Yes, there's going to have to be purchases of buses. We're debating now what type of buses can we, because of the enrollments, could we do with less buses and less routes? We've gone from 60 routes to 54 routes. So those things will be in consideration, but I don't have the authority, nor I do have the ability to recommend where that money comes. All we're doing is putting the specs together, and then I'm sure the mayor will consult with people in Castor as to what type of bus and which ones need to be replaced.
And what you said here is very important, to know that you implemented a procedure to rotate these buses so they all, age out pretty comfortably. So that's the type of information we're looking to find out. We're not looking to divide what $3,150,000 is going to get us. It's more like, what are we looking forward in the new budget that may come up? And we noticed also over these last 2 years with this program that where there's either labor or parts in other departments that have gone higher than what we remember. So we don't know where this money is falling, if it's truly in the bus, this 4,200, or is it also falling in highways and departments, parts? We don't know.
I could tell you that all bus parts, all equipment comes out of this school bus fund, and not any other city department.
Okay, and
our salaries come out of the school bus fund, salaries for the mechanics and everyone else. So it's not that we use a mechanic and charge it to highways and bridges.
Okay, but are there specific mechanics that are working for highways and bridges that only work on the buses?
No, there are 2 mechanics that work specifically for the buses.
And are they listed as full-time or part-time in the highways?
No, there's one, I'm sorry, I take back that, there's one, but his salary is charged to the school rather than to the highway.
Right, because sometimes we get these like, this is...
Yeah, people tell you things they don't know about.
No, when we do speak to departments, we find that out from the departments.
Yeah, there's only one.
So it's one mechanic rather than...
No, you gotta listen.
I'm trying.
He said, is there any mechanic that works for highways and bridges that works down the bus company? And I said, there's one still listed there, but all of the payment comes out of school funds, school transportation funds. It's not charged, nothing's charged to the highway department.
Okay.
And that was a union matter, by the way.
Ken, are these the same mechanics who were looking at the police cars that are sitting behind the stations right now that are junk?
No, David, I'm glad you brought up that point, because when the city took over this is one thing we tried to do. We hired the same drivers that Durham had. We hired the same management team that Durham had. And we hired the same mechanic that Durham had, although he had left to go full-time with the city. And we recruited him back to stay specifically within the school transportation area there. All set, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you for clarifying that, Ken. Thank you.
All right, very good, Ken. Mr. Nappy there, I appreciate it. Everybody, I appreciate your time tonight and questions. So I think it's time that we say good night.
I'm sorry. We still have lots of other questions that haven't been answered, and I don't see any other department heads here. So what's our plan for that?
The meeting should be continued rather than adjourned. Joe Nappick.
There are no other people there to answer the questions that you have.
Well,
and I think at this point maybe we advance them on to Mr. Hillard.
Ask specifically that the department heads be present to answer the questions.
Okay. Well, they've chosen not to show tonight.
Oh, that's the mayor's fault. They should have shown.
Okay. Well, I think that I'll ask Mr. Nappy, or as you will, I'll ask Mr. Hillard to reach out to those folks again and see if they want to appear. If not, nothing more we can do. We can forward those questions off to them and receive them by email.
Mr. Chairman, there's another person here. You want to identify yourself?
Thomas Harbison, Chairman of Conservation Commission.
Oh. Tom Harbison is here. I had one question for you that you answered by email, and I circulated your answer to the chair. I did indicate to them that there was no requirement for you to attend tonight, but I'm glad to see you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Entertaining.
I would like to ask that we, schedule another hearing to speak with the other departments that we have not been able to speak with.
I will ask Mr. Hillard to reach out to them and see what their wishes are at this point.
They're employees, not wishes. The mayor should get his department head.
I will
You provided
again,
to the
we'll
board.
ask Mr. Hillard to reach out,
Thank you.
and we'll see what happens after that. Okay?
Well, right now,
I won't hold my breath.
respectfully, Mr. Chairman, we have a vote scheduled for Thursday evening.
Well, I'll ask Mr. Hillard to, see if he can get that taken care of for us.
I'm not sure what that means.
As I just got through saying, I will ask Mr. Hillard to reach out to those folks, okay, and see if we can't set something up, okay? If not, we can communicate that by email before we end up doing the vote.
One of the issues that your board is facing, and I'd have to check with the city attorney, but the governor's directive as far as the budgetary process, which we adhered to last year, ended the process by 30 days, expired on April 21st. My understanding is, as a result of that expiration, and it has not been extended by the governor, that we are back to the charter at that point, which requires that the Board of A&T make a recommendation on the budget by April 30th, which is this Friday. The Board of Aldermen, additionally, who didn't pass the budget last year until early June, I'm not certain to the exact date, but I think it was June 5th or 6th, are mandated to pass the budget and adopt a mill rate by May 31st. They have adopted a schedule that they will adopt their final meeting on the budget and setting of a mill rate will be May 27th. So we do have certain constraints under the charter that we didn't have last year. It was extended by 30 days, and that ruling by the governor's executive order expired on April 21st.
So, if we need to recommend our budget by Friday, then it seems to me that we need to schedule the additional department heads either tomorrow evening or Thursday evening, and then move our vote to Friday.
There's a meeting notice for Thursday. At this point in time, we legally couldn't schedule a meeting for tomorrow night because no meeting has been scheduled with the clerk or posted on the city's website for tomorrow.
Okay? Well, that limits our options, so I guess we're gonna have to meet again on Thursday and then schedule another meeting for Friday to vote. I mean, we're halfway through the discussion of the city departments, and we're going to need time to sit as a group and discuss what we've heard and discuss a proposal. I don't see how we're going to be able to do that, given the number of departments that we still have yet to speak to. So I think we're going to need another meeting.
Joan Abbott, well, the taxpayers of Shell deserve another meeting so proper consideration to budgetary recommendations can be made.
Okay. Mr. Hillard, would you be able to reach out to those department heads, and we'll talk tomorrow to see what you have been able to come up with?
I can speak to certain departments. I'd like to know if there's some departments which are not critical to this discussion, I believe. There's others that might be. I think we've had, I have also tonight received from Mr. Roach, Brian Roach, who's the superintendent of highways, document in which he has answered several questions. Unable to be here tonight, but he did answer several questions Alvin had put forward, and I distributed that earlier to most members that were present, and I can see that it's emailed to other members tomorrow morning or later this evening. Obviously, highways and bridges, is an important department. It also includes sanitation. There's a couple of other departments underneath that.
Right. I mean, I guess
But he responded in writing, to those requests.
what I'd like to request, I think, is that we set an additional meeting for Friday so that the notice is out, and we don't have the same problem of, well, we can't meet tomorrow because there hasn't been a properly noticed meeting. I'm happy to communicate with folks tomorrow in terms, maybe Mr. Hiller will get additional responses from various department heads to some of the questions tomorrow by email. We can circulate those, and we can see if we can pare down the number of department heads that we actually need to speak to on Thursday. I would really like to be able to speak with Mr. Roach, even though he has provided some information in writing. I would prefer that we get a chance to sort of follow up with him on Thursday about his proposed budget. And I think we need to be prepared to discuss, to the extent that there is a willingness and a commitment to, especially with the Board of Education covering the salary contract, we need to figure out where that money is coming from. There's a couple of possibilities, but I think we need to actually discuss and make a proposal. So we need time to do that.
There's one matter that I could bring up to the board tonight, which would eliminate two departments, specifically, or questions that you had specifically to two departments. And that would be the building department and the tax collectors department. Mr. Nappy took some of my questions. Got too many papers here, but anyway, the mayor's recommended budget has increases in the salary lines in both the building department and tax collector's office. The reason for that is we are finalizing negotiations with the city of Derby to take over the management of both departments. If you look in the revenue lines for the proposed budget, there is a new revenue line get the right figure. On page page 4 of the revenue, excuse me, which is called Municipal Shared Services, with a recommended revenue line of $115,000 revenue. This is a very similar it's a similar proposed contract, which is to be acted on by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Derby on May 13th. Assuming that it is approved by the Board of Aldermen, I had a meeting today with our building official and the tax collector, along with the mayor of the City of Derby, his chief of staff, and
Mr. Hillard, if I can interrupt for just 1 second. All right, I have a personal emergency I need to attend to. All right, so I will be right back in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have here proposed agreements which will be acted on by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Derby. Once that is passed, we'll go to the Board of Aldermen for Shelton. And as you can see, there are increases in the salary levels in the payroll personnel costs of both departments, of the building department and the tax collector's office.
Can you just explain? I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm being a little dense here. It's been a long night. What is the shared services, and why does it require an increase in the salary?
Shared services is that our tax collector who's certified, has been with the city roughly 5 years, will become the tax collector for the city of Derby, entitled. She will remain as an employee of the city of Shelton, and effectively, the same arrangement will hold with the building department. Our building department, the city of Derby currently does not have a building inspector. They are using part-time personnel from the city of Ansonia. We will take over, assuming approval by both boards of aldermen, we will take over those functions, soon.
Okay, so the revenue line item is $115,000 that's coming
That's correct.
in
That the city of Derby
from
will
Derby.
pay. In a very similar manner to what has been done, I think this is the third year that we have provided animal control, services to the city of Derby. And they have paid us, as you can see, 2 lines above that, they pay us $52,500 for that. Obviously, the full details, there are draft contracts, which will be going to the Board of Aldermen in Derby in 2 weeks, which will then come back to us. But I know some of your questions related to those 2 departments, and I think rather than having to bring in the building official or the tax collector, I think it's a valid explanation.
No, that makes sense to me. Thank you. Are there any other items, like, we had asked some questions about...
On the tax collector, one item that you had as far as postage, as to why postage is so small, you may realize that from a personal or business standpoint, you haven't gotten your tax bills for next year. First off, the mill rate hasn't been set, and we incur about 85% of that line item cost in the month of June, when the tax bills are mailed.
Okay. Does that, sorry, I'm trying to match this up with some of the questions that we had asked. That's not the city clerk's office that you're talking about, right? You're talking about the tax collector's office. Do we want to try to address any of the other questions that we had about the revenue side of the budget tonight while we're here, or do we want to leave that for Thursday?
I can touch on the revenue side if you want to. You questioned prior year levy. That is basically delinquent taxes that are collected within that fiscal year for prior years. It's based on some historical factors. It's also based on a percentage of the outstanding taxes receivable, and also how much has been taken off that taxable receivable list by action of the Board of Aldermen with a suspense list. Your second question is additional surplus estimate, 1.6 million. That's a number that's also in this budget, and that is basically taking money to balance the budget from general fund surplus. It becomes an accounting factor in the audit for this past year. That number is consistent with the current number of 1.6 million. So whatever the general fund surplus would be, it's changed its name several times over the past several years as far as from an accounting standpoint, but it's, at the end of the day, it's the cash left.
Okay, that's
the 30th.
Why I keep getting confused, because the name keeps changing.
And it's encumbered against the final figures. In other words, we ran a surplus last year of revenue over expenses of roughly $2 million, which was reduced from an accounting standpoint by 1.6 as a reserve. No funds have been spent out of that amount in the current year, and, with a small exception, and that is the payments on the new fire truck, which the Board of Aldermen approved, late last fall. We will probably take roughly, 60 to 65,000 out of that account in the current year. There is a line in debt service for the new fire truck, for subsequent year.
I did have a question that the school transportation, line item that I thought we had created in order to show the money coming back in from the Board of Education is zero now, and I'm not sure whether it's supposed to be zero.
I don't see that. On the sheet that I have for next year, what's called, and this is a factor of our accounting system, or the software, the budget for a revenue of $3,150,000 shows, and it's called year-to-date expenditures. It's not really year-to-date expenditures. It's what's been transferred out of that. We take, if you look at that, that means that 6 months, or we take $315,000 monthly. So 6 months has been accounted for. Again, there's a lag on that. If you look again on page 4, just under that municipal shared services, that will, in June, number will be $3,150,000 as far as revenue is concerned.
Right, the one I'm looking at is on page 1, and it's 321.17-00, school transportation.
What was that again?
Page 1, 321.17. About midway through the page. Yeah.
Which line?
It's 321, page 1, 321.17-00, school transportation.
And what is the account?
This is the revenue.
Yeah.
It's zero all the way across. I'm just not sure what that one refers to. This is what you're referring to, daily student
but then
transport.
it shows up here. It's really, I think we.
Okay, Mr. Hillard, I'm back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That should be eliminated. It's not,
Okay.
it should be, that line that's on page 4, which
Okay.
is the $3,150,000.
Perfect. Thank you.
Your other question related to building permits, the department requested $515,000, or estimated $515,000 as far as building permit revenues. If you look at, and the mayor upped that to $700,000. If you look at the current year, and again, I remind you that these figures are not up to date, but we certainly have at least 10 weeks of revenue to go, that we're already at $601,000. So I think that's a very realistic, if not low estimate, given the level of activity, building activity within the city. Police private duty, your other question. That's a best guess. It's consistent with what, this year it's down significantly, primarily because of COVID, once again. It really relates a lot to various construction projects, primarily with utility companies and subcontractors for utility companies. You see them every day. It seems to me, I don't have the figures, that has picked up dramatically. There's an offsetting number there. because there's an expense line in miscellaneous for police private duty, and there's a higher revenue line. That's calculated based on the fact that we are responsible for the pension payments for the police officers who are being paid. So our revenue line is greater than the actual costs. But not the actual cost, but our revenue line is greater because we have other costs that are within the budget. For example, as a police officer, for every $100 that he earns, we will have to be paying roughly 25% pension cost to the state pension fund because they're within the state pension fund. And those hours that they earn there are added to their pension. And again, so I mean, it's an estimate. It has minimal impact on the budget as far as the estimate because there's both an expense line and a revenue line which are tied together. The revenue line being greater than the one expense line, but there's other expenses attributable to that cost.
All right. Is there anything else that you think we can do tonight in the absence of the other department heads? There are a couple of questions about debt service. I think you usually handle those questions, Paul.
Some of the questions, I'm responsible for some of these departments. I can make statements on them, particularly, well, the assessor was here earlier, but if you start at 5200 for management information systems, head of management information systems has been historically and remains a part-time employee. As you point out in your question, in fiscal 2020, he earned $126,000. He is not within the city health plan. He does not get paid vacation time. So he remains a part-time employee. That line has gone over virtually every year that I've been here.
Well, I guess that's why I asked the question. I mean, we have this debate every year as to, whether this should be a full-time position or not, but nobody seems to want to do that. But if we're saying that $126,000 was the actual spent in fiscal year 2020, I'm worried that there's not enough money budgeted in that line item at 106.
Yes. And this has been a decision of the mayor historically, and oftentimes in June we've come to the Board of A&T for transfers within the department. He controls the entire budget within that department and has done so masterfully for many, many years.
So do you think that we should be budgeting $126,000 versus 106?
You could. I mean, realistically, with the responsibilities that he has, you just look at this room and the TV screens that are up, the camera that's up, the equipment that's here. It's been a very busy year, and he is essentially a department of one. He has responsibility for the website. He works hand in hand with the police department, that does have their own IT person that has, and I think we all have enormous faith in him as far as his technical ability
The other item in that area was the computer data processing, for police.
The
It's a,
drop from the,
yeah, it was
from the
budgeted,
police
or I
department.
guess requested at 288, and then.
That is
the mayor-
primarily for an upgrade of the police department, what I'll call hardware and software for, significantly new laptops. We think that a lot of this is going to be covered, under the federal COVID grants. A lot of them, we've already started to expense there. There will be more. And, the police department hardware, which is, expensive. Laptops for the cars run in the neighborhood of $3,500, as an example.
Okay, so
But that 200,000, is really gonna be expensed, into the COVID money provided by the federal government.
Okay, so we don't need to worry about that piece of
No,
it, it will be covered by the.
We're satisfied, and I think the police department's satisfied, the IT department's satisfied, we're okay.
While I'm thinking about it, and I don't know if this is your department or not, but I think there's a related, capital expenditure item for, police body cams. Is that?
That's part of the, there's state mandate, I'm not familiar with, there's state mandates for car cameras, body cams, et cetera. That's the 200,
That's
that's a
part
great
of
part, that's where that
Okay.
200,000 is.
Okay, great. Okay. Is there anything else that is under your jurisdiction?
I can touch on purchasing if you want, because purchasing comes under my purview. Trying to see if I got the right page. Oh, here we go. Purchasing, we have not had to utilize that department's, part-time costs. There are 2 full-time employees in there. And so that's why we felt we haven't used it in the past, we haven't last year, we haven't this year. You never know if there's, continued illness or something where we might have to bring someone in on a limited basis. As far as the purchasing budget, the equipment purchasing, that's increased. We had hoped to be able to use some of that money within the purchasing budget as COVID-related expenses for copiers and other equipment, basically called hardware. We're not able to expense that type of thing towards the COVID, since it's considered a normal budgetary expense, and that's. And I guess the one thing I would say, and I bring this to attention, say, equipment purchasing budget is up. I'm sure you've heard in every industry, in every retail business, in every construction business, the supply chain in this country is backed up. You can't get lumber, you can't get parts, you can't get material, you can't get any number of things. And we suffer from that, and the prices are going up. There isn't a day that goes by when you look at the newspaper where some major company is raising their prices. So Procter & Gamble is raising their prices soon 7% across the board.
So that's why that line item is going up?
Yeah, I mean, the costs are going up, and the ability to get them are difficult. I mentioned the IT person before. Recently, he tried to order cameras for Zoom meetings for people could have in their office. We ordered 30. We were able to get 3. And that list goes on. I mean,
Thank you. Anything else that we can check off the list?
I think that's it.
Is the public risk management question, did you see that one about the split in the salary?
Yeah, I
in two
have,
different
and for
places?
those people who are online, Mr. Roach submitted answers to your various questions. They relate to Public Works or Highways and Bridges, Public Works Director, Sanitation Department. And I will distribute, I will email those back to his answers. I think you people have received copies of it.
Okay, and do we have, under the category of transfer to under other funds, just to handle the kind of general questions, number 6,900, capital projects, $2 million. We get these capital project proposals from every department, but we don't get a proposal as to which of those are proposed to be
Most of
funded.
those proposals are limited to half a dozen departments, obviously. Highways and Bridges, Police, Fire, the major departments. And they will come in time. Obviously, the Board of Aldermen has flexibility in that they can have aldermanic bonding up to 2% of the operating budget in any given year.
So essentially what you're saying is, we're not making any specific proposals right now, and the Board of Aldermen will decide that at some point in the future.
There have been, the Board of Aldermen has appropriated to date in this fiscal year roughly $900,000 in aldermanic bonding, so they have some flexibility in the remaining 2+ months as to what might be spent.
Okay. All right, I don't know that there's anything else that we're going to be able to accomplish, but I really would like to get an agreement and understanding that we're going to notice another meeting for Friday so that we have that on the calendar and we're not gonna run into
We can put it on the calendar.
the public meeting
if need
problem.
be. It's just to make it, so that we meet the requirements of at least posting notice for it.
Thank you. And you'll get back to us with written answers and/or availability of the other department heads for Thursday.
I think a vast number of them have been answered tonight, and as I say, along with the answers that came in writing from Highways and Bridges. I think I've just, you're right, as far as the building department I discussed because of the Derby situation along with the tax collector's item. So I think the vast majority of your questions have been answered.
Right, I'll go through my notes after this and see kind of where we're at, and I'm happy to, communicate with you and the other members, via email tomorrow, and we can try to figure out, hopefully, a plan for Thursday. I'm just worried about, running up against that clock and want to make sure that we have time
I can post if
discuss if we need to.
the board so wishes, potentially a meeting for Friday night, which may or may not be held.
This is, if I can interject, I know this is an anti discussion, it's an anti matter, but I just want to point out that you gotta watch the notice and what you do. If you take the notice for tomorrow and try to change it, tomorrow might be a special meeting because of the COVID.
Well, there's a meeting scheduled for Thursday night at 6 o'clock.
Thursday night, yeah. It may be a special because of the COVID.
And the intent was at that time was to
Just say you.
make the recommendation.
This question, check it out.
We think we noticed the wrong kind of meeting?
Yeah, I'm thinking that, you might just be locked into that meeting that's scheduled and noticed already. And I don't think you can change it because I think it's a I don't think you can change the content, nor can you add to it because it's a special.
I think we have time to repost an agenda, though, for Thursday. We don't have time to post an agenda for tomorrow night, is what you were saying. But I think if we had to change the agenda for Thursday, we still have time to do that, right?
You're right, for 24 hours.
I think we're okay. And that's why I'm saying I'd like to get another meeting.
You have to do a revised, so that's
Right,
Posted for Thursday, we're not posted for Friday.
Friday, because it's special meeting.
right.
Yeah, Friday.
Well, I think they'll both be special meetings, right? So we may have to repost the agenda if we're not planning to vote on Thursday.
On Friday, you're going to be voting.
I think that's
That's
what I'm suggesting.
And then if you postpone and you have a second meeting for Thursday, then I think that becomes a special meeting on Thursday as well.
Check with the administrative assistant.
Yeah. And then Friday would definitely be a special.
Friday would definitely be a special,
Yeah.
if needed.
We're not involved.
No, we're not.
No, you're not.
They didn't mess me up with the time.
Jerry, are you still up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, see if he wants to call the meeting.
Mr. Franzino?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm still here.
Does that plan sound agreeable to you, that we'll notice a meeting for Friday for the vote, and we'll renotice the agenda for Thursday to have additional, testimony?
I will discuss that with Mr. Hillard tomorrow, because I'm not sure what everybody's schedule is at this point. So I will discuss that with Mr. Hillard, and we'll get back to you.
Okay. Well, I just want to make it clear, that's my request, and, I'm happy to communicate tomorrow at any point, via email to set the agendas.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so I think at this point, since there's nothing further, that we adjourn the meeting for the night. All right?
A motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night. Thank you, everyone. Bye.